As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting a soft golden hue over the city of Medina, Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, and his companions arrived, marking the beginning of a profound new chapter. In the year 622 CE, this city, once divided by fierce tribal rivalries and deep-rooted conflict, stood on the threshold of a remarkable transformation. The journey from Mecca had been fraught with challenges, yet as the Prophet entered Medina, it was clear that a higher purpose had brought him here. His very presence radiated a quiet strength, a promise of peace, and the hope of healing in a society desperate for unity. Medina, at the time known as Yathrib, had known only turmoil, its people torn apart by generations of strife. But now, with the arrival of the Prophet, there was a spark of hope. His teachings, rooted in justice, equality, and compassion, began to unravel the deep divisions of the past. It was here that the Prophet would lay the foundation for a society built on divine principles, a society where the bonds of brotherhood and mutual respect would replace old enmities. The Constitution of Medina, a groundbreaking document, would set the stage for this transformation, promising peace, respect, and equality for all, regardless of tribe or faith. This was more than the arrival of a leader. It was the dawn of a revolution, one that would reshape not only Medina but the entire world. The message of Islam, with its emphasis on unity, compassion, and social justice, began to take root, offering a path forward for a divided people. The Prophet's guidance would forever alter the course of history, as his leadership inspired the people of Medina to build a society that upheld the values of peace and brotherhood. In this quiet moment, as the evening settled upon Medina, a new era was beginning, one defined by the transformative power of faith and the promise of a better tomorrow. The sun was beginning to set, casting a soft golden glow over the horizon as Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, and his companions neared the city of Medina. It was 622 CE, and the journey from Mecca had been long and fraught with danger, but the city of Medina awaited them as the next chapter of Islam's story was about to unfold. Known then as Yathrib, Medina was a city divided, torn between fierce rivalries and conflicts between its various tribes. Its people had lived for years in turmoil, their disagreements leading to constant strife. Yet the arrival of the Prophet, PBUH, would mark the beginning of a remarkable transformation. As Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, entered Medina, the air was thick with anticipation. The city had already felt the stirrings of change as the news of the Prophet's migration spread. The people who had previously been skeptical or even hostile to the Prophet's message now found themselves facing an undeniable reality. This was no ordinary man. His very presence exuded a quiet strength and a sense of divine purpose. The diverse tribes of Medina, from the Kul, AWS and Khazraj to the Jewish clans and others, had lived in tension for years. But with Prophet Muhammad's PBUH arrival, there was hope for peace, unity, and a new way of life that could heal the wounds of the past. Medina was a city at a crossroads. It was a place that had witnessed the agony of war and the tension of shifting allegiances. Before the Prophet's PBUH arrival, the tribes were at the brink of civil war, their constant feuding threatening to destroy them. The city was divided by blood feuds and hatred, and the alliances between tribes were fragile at best. This was a society in need of healing, and it was here that Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, would begin his monumental task of bringing peace to a fractured world. The people of Medina, led by their two major tribes, the Awaz and Khazraj, had been waiting for a leader to guide them out of the darkness. They had long been aware of the Prophet's teachings from Mecca, and many of them had already accepted him as a messenger of God. When the Prophet, PBUH, arrived, they received him with open arms, hoping he would bring an end to the fighting that had plagued their lives. They greeted him as a man of peace, someone who would help mend the rifts between their warring tribes and restore harmony to their society. As the Prophet, PBUH, entered the city, he immediately set out to establish peace. One of the first things he did was to lay the foundation for a new social contract. the Constitution of Medina. This document would become a cornerstone of the Islamic State, outlining the rights and responsibilities of all the people in Medina, regardless of their tribe, religion, or background. The constitution would ensure that the people of Medina, both Muslims and non-Muslims, could live together in peace, with mutual respect and cooperation. The document addressed the needs of the city's diverse population. It acknowledged the different tribes, their rights, and their obligations. It also set out the principles of justice and equality, stating that all members of the community, regardless of their origin or belief, were equal before the law. This was revolutionary, in a time when tribal loyalty often outweighed any sense of justice or fairness. The Prophet, PBUH, was laying the groundwork for a society based on divine principles rather than tribal affiliation. But it wasn't just the constitution of Medina that was pivotal. The Prophet, PBUH, began to forge new alliances between the people of Medina, uniting the Aws and Khazraj, who had been bitter enemies for years. His wisdom and diplomacy helped heal the divisions between them, and his leadership brought a sense of unity to the city. Slowly, the tensions that had once defined Medina began to fade away. One of the most significant steps toward peace came when the Prophet, PBUH, established a bond of brotherhood between the immigrants, the Muhajirun, who had migrated from Mecca, and the residents of Medina, the Ansar. The Prophet, PBU, forged this bond as a means of creating solidarity between the two groups. He encouraged them to share their wealth and resources, to care for one another, and to support each other in times of need. This act of solidarity not only strengthened the ties between the new and old residents of Medina, but also set a powerful example of community and cooperation. Chapter 2: The Power of Faith. In the early days of Islam, the city of Medina stood as a testament to the transformative power of faith. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, had arrived to a city that was torn by division. Yet in the hearts of the few early Muslims, there was an unshakable belief in the one true God, Allah. Though their numbers were small, their faith was immense, and it was this very faith that would guide them through the trials and tribulations that lay ahead. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, understood that in the early stages of Islam, the power of faith was not just a matter of belief, but of devotion, trust, and perseverance. The challenges ahead were not just external, the threats of persecution, poverty, and war, but internal as well. His followers needed to be grounded in a deep, unshakable trust in Allah, for it was this trust that would enable them to overcome the trials of life. At the heart of the Prophet's, PBUH, teachings was the belief that true strength came from unwavering faith in Allah. It was not the strength of armies or the wealth of empires that mattered. It was the strength of the heart, the ability to remain steadfast and patient in the face of adversity. The Prophet, PBUH, would often remind his followers that it was Allah who was the ultimate provider and protector, and that every trial they faced was a test of their faith and patience. For the early Muslims in Medina, these tests came quickly. Despite the optimism and hope that accompanied the Prophet's PBUH arrival, the city was not free from challenges. The new Muslim community found itself surrounded by enemies, the Quraysh from Mecca, who sought to destroy the nascent Muslim community, and the tribes who were still skeptical of the Prophet's message. Tensions were high, and it seemed as though the Muslims' faith would be tested at every turn. But it was precisely during these trials that the strength of their faith began to shine. One of the first tests came with the Battle of Badr. It was an unexpected confrontation, a battle fought between the Muslims, who were vastly outnumbered and ill-equipped, and the Quraysh army from Mecca. For the early Muslims, this battle was not just a physical one, but a test of their faith in Allah. The odds were stacked against them, and yet they fought not with weapons alone, but with the belief that Allah's help was with them. Before the battle, the Prophet, PBUH, had urged his followers to trust in Allah's plan. If you are patient and fear Allah, He will not harm you, he told them. His words were a reminder that faith was the simagdate, bedrock on which they stood. The Muslims' victory at Badr became a defining moment, not just for the young Islamic State, but for the hearts of the believers. It was a confirmation that their faith in Allah could overcome any obstacle, no matter how insurmountable it seemed. However, the power of faith was not just about the grand victories, it was also about the quiet, everyday moments when believers chose to place their trust in Allah. Whether in times of prosperity or adversity, the Prophet, PBUH, emphasized that true faith was about consistency. It was in the patience of a mother caring for her child, the resilience of a merchant facing hardship, and the quiet devotion of a person in prayer. These everyday acts, grounded in the awareness of Allah's presence, were what made a community strong. As the Muslim community grew, the need for faith became even more evident. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, constantly reminded his followers that they were not to be swayed by worldly temptations or distractions. The message was clear. Success did not lie in material wealth or in the fleeting pleasures of life. Success was found in submission to Allah, in living a life of humility, in trusting Allah's plan, and in remaining patient through both ease and hardship. The early Muslims experienced many hardships in the early years of Medina. There were times when food was scarce, and there were times when the city was under siege. Yet through it all, they held fast to their faith. They were a community that had learned to rely not on their own strength, but on the strength that came from their belief in Allah's mercy and guidance. One of the most profound aspects of the Prophet's PBUH teachings was his emphasis on the importance of patience. Indeed, Allah is with those who are patient, he would say, reminding the believers that every trial, every hardship was an opportunity to grow closer to Allah. Patience in this sense was not just about enduring difficulty, but about maintaining faith in the face of adversity, trusting that Allah's plan was always for the best. 1. Shahada, faith. The first pillar, Shahada, is the declaration of faith. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. This simple yet profound statement encapsulates the very essence of Islam, affirming the belief in the oneness of God and the prophethood of Muhammad PBUH. The Shahada is both a spiritual and social declaration. It signifies one's commitment to the divine truth and acceptance of Muhammad PBUH as the final messenger of Allah. For the early Muslims, embracing the Shahada was a transformative moment, one that united them in belief and separated them from the idolatry and polytheism that had dominated the Arabian Peninsula for centuries. The Shahada was the foundation of the Muslim identity, a declaration that connected believers not only to Allah, but to the entire Ummah, the global Muslim community. It was through this declaration that the early Muslims in Medina became part of something much greater than themselves, and it was through this simple, powerful testimony that their lives were forever changed. 2. Salat, prayer. The second pillar, Salat, refers to the 5 daily prayers that every Muslim must perform. These prayers, known as salah, are a direct link between the believer and Allah. They are performed at fixed times throughout the day, at dawn, midday, mid-afternoon, sunset, and night. Each prayer is an opportunity for Muslims to reconnect with Allah, seek His mercy, and reaffirm their submission to Him. For the early Muslims in Medina, Salat was more than just a ritual. It was a time for spiritual reflection, a moment to pause and remember their purpose in life. The act of prayer also served to unify the community, as Muslims gathered together in the mosque for congregational prayers, particularly the Friday Jumu'ah prayer. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, emphasized the importance of Salat as a way to maintain mindfulness of Allah and to seek His guidance in all aspects of life. Through Salat, the Muslim community was reminded of its dependence on Allah, and it reinforced the values of discipline, humility, and gratitude. 3. Zakat, charity. The third pillar, zakat, is the giving of charity to those in need. Muslims are required to give a portion of their wealth, typically 2.5% of their savings, to help the less fortunate. Zakat is not just an act of charity, but a means of purifying one's wealth. The word zakat itself means purification. By giving to others, Muslims purify their hearts and their material possessions. In Medina, zakat was essential to the social fabric of the community. It helped to alleviate poverty and reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. The early Muslim community was diverse, consisting of both wealthy merchants and destitute immigrants from Mecca, who had fled persecution and arrived in Medina with little to their name. The Prophet, PBUH, emphasized that giving zakat was not just an obligation, but a way to foster empathy, compassion, and solidarity within the community. It encouraged Muslims to view their wealth not as a personal possession, but as a trust from Allah to be used for the greater good of society. 4. Sawm, fasting. The fourth pillar, Sawm, is the act of fasting during the month of Ramadan. During this month, Muslims abstain from food, drink, and other physical needs from dawn until sunset. The fast is a means of developing self-discipline and empathy for those who are less fortunate. It is also a time for spiritual reflection, increased devotion, and self-purification. For the early Muslims, fasting during Ramadan was an opportunity to grow closer to Allah and to purify the soul. The Prophet, PBUH, taught that fasting was not merely about abstaining from food, but about cultivating a deeper sense of empathy and gratitude. By experiencing hunger and thirst, Muslims were reminded of the struggles faced by the poor and the marginalized. This helped to foster a sense of solidarity and compassion within the community, as it encouraged Muslims to not only care for their own spiritual needs, but to reach out to others in need. 5. Hajj, pilgrimage. The fifth pillar, Hajj, is the pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca, which every Muslim is required to undertake at least once in their lifetime, provided they are physically and financially able. The Hajj is a journey of profound spiritual significance, symbolizing the unity of the Muslim Ummah and the submission of all believers to Allah. Although the Prophet, PBUH, had not yet performed the Hajj during the early days in Medina, it was a crucial part of the broader Islamic tradition. It serves as a reminder of the oneness of humanity as Muslims from all over the world gather in Mecca to perform the rituals of Hajj. The pilgrimage fosters a sense of unity, humility, and equality, as all Muslims, regardless of their social status, ethnicity, or background, dress in simple white garments and perform the same rituals. This act of worship is a powerful reminder of the transient nature of life and the eternal nature of Allah. While the Muslims in Medina had not yet performed the pilgrimage, the significance of Hajj was always at the forefront of their minds. The early Muslims looked forward to the day when they would be able to embark on this sacred journey, and its significance continued to shape their understanding of their place in the world. As the early Muslim community in Medina grew, Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, faced the monumental task of not only guiding them in matters of faith, but also establishing a system of governance that upheld the principles of justice, fairness, and equality. The society was a diverse one, made up of Muslims, Jews, and various tribes, and the challenge was to create a legal and moral framework that could guide all people towards righteousness, while ensuring that justice was served, regardless of one's status, background, or wealth. Justice for women. Before the advent of Islam, women in Arabia were often treated as property, denied basic rights, and subjected to harsh cultural norms. But when Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, arrived in Medina, he instituted reforms that would radically change the status of women in society. The Prophet's teachings were clear. Women were not inferior to men, but were equal in the eyes of Allah. They were entitled to their rights, including the right to inheritance, the right to choose their marriage partner, and the right to education. The Prophet, PBUH, spoke often of the rights of women. He emphasized their role as both individuals and partners in the community. One of the most important reforms was the right of women to inherit property, something that had been denied to them in pre-Islamic Arabia. The Quran explicitly granted women the right to inherit, ensuring that they were not left destitute after the death of a husband or father. This was a revolutionary change, as it gave women financial independence and security in a world where they had little to no control over their own lives. In addition to inheritance, the Prophet, PBUH, also championed the right of women to have a say in their marriage. The Prophet's teachings made it clear that a woman's consent was essential in marriage, and the idea of forced marriages was rejected. Women were also given the right to divorce, a privilege that was often denied to them in pre-Islamic society. This legal framework empowered women, offering them protections and recognizing their dignity and worth as human beings. Justice for orphans. Another key aspect of the Prophet's PBUH Code of Justice was his commitment to protecting the rights of orphans. Orphaned children were among the most vulnerable members of society in pre-Islamic Arabia, often left without protection or care. In Medina, however, the Prophet, PBUH, emphasized the importance of looking after orphans and treating them with kindness and respect. The Quran contains numerous verses that highlight the rights of orphans and the rewards for those who care for them. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, established clear guidelines for the treatment of orphans. He emphasized that orphans should be provided for, that their inheritance should be protected, and that their welfare should be prioritized. He also warned against taking advantage of orphans, particularly in matters of inheritance, saying, "Those who devour the wealth of orphans unjustly are only filling their bellies with fire." The Prophet, PBUH, himself set an example of kindness towards orphans, having cared for his own orphaned cousin and encouraging his followers to do the same. Justice for the poor. Perhaps the most important principle in the Prophet's PBUH Code of Justice was the commitment to addressing poverty and inequality. The Prophet, PBUH, understood that the gap between the rich and poor in society was a source of social tension and division, and he took decisive steps to address it. The foundation of this approach was the principle of zakat, the third pillar of Islam, which required Muslims to give a portion of their wealth to the poor. This act of charity was not just an act of kindness, but a religious obligation that helped to redistribute wealth and reduce inequality in society. In addition to zakat, the Prophet, PBUH, also advocated for the fair treatment of the poor, encouraging his followers to be generous and mindful of their neighbors. He taught that helping the poor was not simply a charitable act, but a way to purify one's wealth and strengthen one's relationship with Allah. The Prophet, PBUH, was known for his humility and his generosity, often giving away what little he had to those in need. His life served as a model for how to live with compassion and care for those less fortunate. Equality and fairness. The Prophet Muhammad's PBUH legal reforms were not just about addressing the specific needs of women, orphans, and the poor, but about establishing a system of justice that was fair and equitable for all people. He abolished practices that perpetuated inequality, such as the practice of blood feuds and tribal favoritism, replacing them with a legal system that was based on the principles of equality and fairness. The Prophet's PBUH commitment to justice was encapsulated in his famous saying, "The best of you are those who are most beneficial to others." In Medina, the law was applied equally to all, regardless of their status, wealth, or background. The Prophet, PBUH, created a society where the rich and powerful were held accountable for their actions, and where the weak and vulnerable were protected by the law. He emphasized that the pursuit of justice was not just a matter of upholding laws, but of embodying the principles of honesty, integrity, and fairness in all aspects of life. As Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, took on the mantle of leadership in Medina, he embarked on a profound mission to build not just a group of followers, but a cohesive and vibrant community, a society rooted in faith, mutual respect, and cooperation. The teachings of Islam were not only meant to guide individuals in their relationship with Allah, but also to cultivate a spirit of brotherhood and social responsibility that would bind the Muslim community together. This new community was to be founded on principles of justice, support, and shared purpose, creating a model society that would endure for generations. The foundation of brotherhood. One of the first steps in creating this community was the Prophet's PBUH, emphasis on the concept of brotherhood. He understood that the early Muslims in Medina came from diverse backgrounds, including the emigrants from Mecca, the Muhajirun, and the native Medinan converts, the Ansar. The bonds of tribal loyalty, which had previously divided the people, needed to be replaced with bonds of faith and mutual support. To solidify this unity, the Prophet, PBUH, instituted a groundbreaking practice, the bond of brotherhood between the Muhajirun and the Ansar. This bond was a radical departure from the tribal allegiances that had once defined the Arab world. The Prophet, PBUH, paired members of the two groups as brothers, encouraging them to share their resources, help each other in times of need, and support one another in all aspects of life. This act was not just symbolic, but also practical. It meant that the Muhajirun, who had fled Mecca with little more than their faith, were welcomed by the Ansar, who shared their homes, their wealth, and their lives with them. The role of mutual aid and cooperation. In the Prophet's PBUH, vision for Medina, the community's strength was not based solely on religious unity, but also on mutual aid and cooperation. The early Muslims understood that they were not just a spiritual brotherhood, but also a practical society, where the well-being of each individual was a shared responsibility. This sense of solidarity was reinforced by the teachings of Islam, which encouraged believers to support one another in times of hardship and to share their resources with those in need. One of the key practices that reflected this spirit of cooperation was sadaqah, voluntary charity. The Prophet, PBUH, encouraged his followers to help one another through acts of kindness, whether through financial assistance, offering shelter, or providing for the poor and needy. He taught that helping others was an essential part of being a good Muslim, and that the rewards for such acts were immense in the sight of Allah. This concept of mutual aid became a cornerstone of the community's social fabric, as it ensured that no one was left to suffer in isolation. The role of the mosque in community building. The mosque, under the leadership of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, became the central hub of the Muslim community in Medina. It was not only a place of worship, but also a place of gathering, learning, and decision-making. The Prophet, PBUH, frequently held consultations with his companions, discussing important matters of governance, social issues, and religious practice. It was in the mosque that the early Muslims came together for prayer, and it was here that the community's bond was continually reinforced, building a just and caring society. Prophet Muhammad's PBUH leadership in Medina was marked by a deep commitment to building a just and caring society. He understood that a community's strength lay not only in its faith, but also in its ability to look after its members and ensure that everyone had the opportunity to live a dignified life. The early Muslims in Medina were taught to care for one another, to support the weak, and to work together for the common good. One of the Prophet's, PBUH, most important teachings in this regard was the concept of ummah, the collective community of Muslims. The Prophet, PBUH, emphasized that the well-being of the individual was intrinsically tied to the well-being of the community. He reminded the Muslims that they were not isolated individuals, but part of a larger family, responsible for each other's welfare. The spirit of mutual responsibility that he instilled in Medina created a society where the poor and the needy were cared for, and where everyone had a role to play in the collective success of the community. The arrival of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, in Medina marked the beginning of a new chapter for the early Muslim community, one not only shaped by faith, but also by the harsh realities of conflict. While the Prophet, PBUH, worked tirelessly to establish a just society rooted in brotherhood and unity, external challenges soon emerged. The Quraysh of Mecca, who had long been opposed to Islam, began to view the growing influence of the Muslim community in Medina as a threat. This led to a series of military confrontations, which would test not only the strategic acumen of the Prophet, PBUH, but also the resolve and faith of his followers. The early battles, Badr, Uhud, and the Battle of the Trench, would serve as profound trials of courage, perseverance, and the strength of the believers' trust in Allah. The Battle of Badr, a test of faith and divine intervention. The first major military confrontation came in 624 CE with the Battle of Badr, a pivotal moment in the history of Islam. The Muslims in Medina, although few in number and ill-equipped compared to the Quraysh, were driven by unwavering faith in Allah's guidance. The battle was sparked by a caravan led by the Quraysh, which the Muslims sought to intercept as a means of reclaiming some of the wealth taken from them when they fled Mecca. The Quraysh, however, responded by sending a large army to protect their caravan and confront the Muslims. Despite being outnumbered, with only around 300 men compared to the Quraysh's 1,000, the Muslims were resolute. The Prophet, PBUH, urged them to rely on Allah's support and remain steadfast in their mission. Before the battle, he prayed fervently for Allah's assistance, saying, "O Allah, if this small group is destroyed today, you will not be worshipped on earth." The Muslims' courage and the strategic position they took at Badr turned the tide in their favour, and Allah's help arrived in the form of angels sent to assist the believers. The battle ended in a decisive victory for the Muslims, despite the odds stacked against them. The Battle of Badr was not only a military triumph, but a profound lesson in the power of faith and the importance of trust in Allah's plan. It reinforced the belief that victory in Islam did not depend on numbers or military strength, but on Allah's will. The victory was seen as a divine endorsement of the Prophet's mission and gave the Muslims renewed confidence in their faith and the legitimacy of their cause. The Battle of Uhud, a test of obedience and resilience. However, the victory at Badr was followed by a series of challenges, the most notable being the Battle of Uhud, fought in 625 CE. This battle arose after the Quraysh, enraged by their defeat at Badr, sought to avenge their loss. They gathered a much larger army and marched towards Medina, determined to crush the Muslims once and for all. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, and his companions knew that they could not afford to be complacent. They prepared to defend their city, and the Prophet, PBUH, devised a strategic plan. He placed archers on a hill overlooking the battlefield, instructing them to stay in their positions and not to leave, regardless of the outcome of the battle. This was crucial to prevent the Quraysh from surrounding the Muslims and gaining the upper hand. At the beginning of the battle, the Muslims gained the advantage, and it seemed as though victory was within their grasp. However, as the tide began to turn, a critical mistake occurred. Some of the archers, seeing the Muslims' initial success, left their positions to gather the spoils of war, disobeying the Prophet's PBUH orders. This allowed the Quraysh cavalry to break through and attack the Muslims from behind, leading to a shift in the battle. The Muslims were forced to retreat, and many were injured, including the Prophet, PBUH, himself, who was struck by a blow to his face. Despite this, the Battle of Uhud was a profound lesson in obedience and resilience. The Prophet, PBUH, reminded his followers that the defeat was not a sign of weakness, but a test of faith. He encouraged them to remain steadfast, reassuring them that the trials they faced were part of Allah's plan and that true victory was in their perseverance, not in mere military conquest. The Battle of Uhud also emphasized the importance of unity within the community. The loss was painful, but it was through their unity and commitment to the cause that the Muslims were able to regroup and continue their mission. The battle reinforced the belief that victory and defeat were both part of Allah's will, and the Muslims' duty was to remain patient and resolute in the face of hardship. The Battle of the Trench, a test of patience and strategy. The next major conflict came in 627 CE during the Battle of the Trench, also known as the Battle of the Confederates. In this battle, a coalition of forces, including the Quraysh, Jewish tribes, and other Arab tribes, laid siege to Medina with the aim of destroying the Muslim community once and for all. The Prophet, PBUH, and his companions, realizing the enormity of the threat, decided to dig a trench around the city to protect themselves from the enemy's attacks, a strategy suggested by Salman al-Farsi, a Persian companion. This defensive tactic was unprecedented in Arabian warfare, and it bought the Muslims time to prepare for the siege. For weeks, the Muslims endured the hardships of a prolonged siege, with food supplies running low and morale tested. The enemy forces attempted to breach the trench, but were unable to break through. During this time, the Prophet, PBUH, remained calm and patient, inspiring his followers to stay strong despite the difficult circumstances. Moral lessons from the early battles. The early battles in the life of the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, were not just military struggles, but profound tests of faith and perseverance. Each battle taught critical moral lessons that would shape the community's understanding of Islam and its role in the world. From the victory at Badr, the Muslims learnt that faith in Allah was the key to success, regardless of the odds. The defeat at Uhud taught them the importance of obedience and unity, while the victory at the Battle of the Trench emphasized the value of patience, strategy, and reliance on Allah's plan. Through these trials, the early Muslims demonstrated immense courage and resilience, forging a community that was bound together not only by their faith, but by their unwavering commitment to the cause of Islam. The challenges they faced would continue to shape their journey, strengthening their resolve and deepening their trust in Allah. The year was 628 CE, and the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, and his companions were preparing for what they believed would be a sacred journey, the pilgrimage to Mecca. The city of Mecca, once their home, had been the center of their trials and tribulations since they had fled it years earlier. Now, with the growing strength of the Muslim community in Medina, the Prophet, PBUH, and his followers set out with the intention of performing the umrah, a lesser pilgrimage. They approached Mecca peacefully, with no desire for conflict, but with the firm hope of re-entering the city as part of their spiritual journey. The wisdom of diplomacy. After a series of negotiations, the Prophet, PBUH, and the Quraysh agreed to enter into a peace treaty, known as the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. The treaty was signed at a place called Hudaybiyah, located just outside Mecca, marking a historic moment for the Muslim community. At the core of the treaty was the recognition that both parties, the Muslims and the Quraysh, would cease hostilities for a period of 10 years, during which time both sides could focus on their respective affairs without the threat of war. On the surface, the terms of the treaty appeared to favor the Quraysh, as it stipulated that if any tribe or individual joined the Muslims, the Quraysh could not oppose them, while if anyone joined the Quraysh, they would be allowed to return to Mecca without interference. Moreover, the Muslims were required to return to Medina without performing the pilgrimage that year, and they were allowed to come back the following year under the condition that they would stay for only 3 days, a turning point for Islam. Though initially seen as a setback by some, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah marked a crucial turning point in the spread of Islam. With the cessation of hostilities and the establishment of peace for the first time in years, the Muslims were able to travel freely, spread their message, and engage in diplomatic relations without the constant threat of conflict. The treaty allowed Islam to grow in ways that would have been impossible amid the chaos of war. In the following months, the treaty proved to be a powerful catalyst for the spread of Islam. With the 10 years of peace, the Muslims were able to establish new alliances with surrounding tribes who had previously been hesitant to join their cause, fearing retribution from the Quraysh. Furthermore, the Quraysh themselves found that the treaty did not weaken their position as they had initially feared. Instead, it allowed them to evaluate the growing strength of the Muslim community more objectively, and some among the Quraysh began to see Islam not as a threat, but as a movement worthy of respect. The peace brought about by Hudaybiyah created the conditions for a more open dialogue, and in turn, more individuals from Mecca began to embrace the Sahwi, teachings of the Prophet, PBUH, the prophetic leadership, patience, vision, and strategic thinking. What set the Treaty of Hudaybiyah apart from many of the confrontations that had preceded it was the Prophet's PBUH, unwavering patience and clear vision. Where others might have rushed to resolve the conflict through force, the Prophet, PBUH, understood that the strength of Islam was not in military conquest, but in the strength of its principles and the bonds of faith that connected the Muslim community. He sought peace not as a sign of weakness, but as a strategic and moral imperative, one that would enable the community to flourish and fulfill its divine mission. The Prophet, PBUH, also demonstrated humility and confidence in the face of criticism. When some of his companions voiced their disappointment over the treaty's terms, he reassured them that this peace would pave the way for greater successes. His conviction in the wisdom of the agreement was rooted in his deep understanding of the bigger picture. While others focused on the immediate inconveniences, He saw the long-term opportunities for spreading Islam and fostering greater unity among Muslims and non-Muslims alike. The moral lessons of Hudaybiyah. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah serves as a profound lesson in the virtues of patience, diplomacy, and foresight. It demonstrates that sometimes, in the face of seemingly unfair conditions, strategic patience is required to achieve a greater goal. The treaty showed that the true strength of Islam lies not in military might, but in the strength of character, the integrity of its message, and the trust in Allah's plan. The treaty was a reminder that even in times of adversity or compromise, the Prophet, PBUH, remained steadfast in his mission and trust in Allah. It also highlighted the importance of maintaining peace and resolving conflicts through dialogue rather than through violence. By accepting the treaty, Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, set a powerful example for future generations, teaching that peace, while not always immediately satisfying, can be the pathway to greater victories and lasting success. The prelude to the conquest. The path to the conquest of Mecca began with the Treaty of Hudaybiyah in 628 CE, a peace agreement between the Muslims and the Quraysh of Mecca. The treaty had established a 10-year truce, during which both sides could engage in peaceful trade and relations. However, in 630 CE, a critical violation of the treaty occurred when the Quraysh allied with a tribe that had attacked a tribe allied with the Muslims. This breach of the treaty served as the catalyst for the events that would follow. When the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, learned of the breach, he knew that the time had come to act. He decided to march towards Mecca, but with a clear and deliberate intention, not to destroy the city, but to reclaim it for Islam, peacefully and justly. He gathered an army of around 10,000 Muslims, a force that was both substantial and symbolic. The Prophet, PBUH, led this army not with vengeance, but with a mission of peace, determined to offer forgiveness and restore the sanctity of the Kaaba, the holiest site in Islam. The march to Mecca. The journey to Mecca was a defining moment in the life of the Prophet, PBUH, and his followers. As the Muslim army made its way toward the city, they were met with the realization that they were on the brink of a historic victory. The Quraysh, aware of the approaching force, scrambled to prepare for defense. However, the sheer size of the Muslim army, combined with the Prophet's, PBUH, message of peace and reconciliation, left the Quraysh with little hope of resisting. As the Muslims approached Mecca, the Prophet, PBUH, gave precise instructions for the siege. He ensured that there would be no bloodshed, no unnecessary destruction. His instructions were clear. The aim was to cleanse the city of idolatry and establish the worship of the one true God. The Prophet's, PBUH, leadership during this time reflected his deep sense of mercy and his commitment to unity. He was not seeking to punish, but to forgive, and to bring the people of Mecca into the fold of Islam. The entry into Mecca. When the Muslim army reached the outskirts of Mecca, the Quraysh were left with no option but to surrender. The city's leaders, who had once been bitter enemies of Islam, now found themselves at the mercy of the Prophet, PBUH. This moment, which could have easily been one of vengeance and retribution, instead became a testament to the Prophet's, PBUH, magnanimity. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, entered Mecca triumphantly, but humbly, riding on a camel, his head bowed in prayer, giving thanks to Allah for the victory. Once inside the city, the Prophet, PBUH, made a remarkable declaration. He forgave those who had once persecuted him, those who had driven him and his followers out of Mecca and made countless attempts to undermine Islam. The Prophet's, PBUH, words were clear. Go, for you are free. He did not seek revenge for the suffering he had endured or for the harm done to his companions. Instead, he chose forgiveness and mercy, showing his commitment to healing old wounds and creating a unified community. The impact on Mecca and the Arabian Peninsula. The peaceful conquest of Mecca had profound implications, not just for the city itself, but for the entire Arabian Peninsula. Mecca was the spiritual and commercial heart of the region, and its conversion to Islam represented a major victory for the faith. It opened the doors for the widespread acceptance of Islam throughout the Arabian Peninsula. Many of the Quraysh, who had been among the staunchest opponents of the Prophet PBUH, now embraced Islam, recognizing the strength and integrity of his message. A lesson in forgiveness and unity. The conquest of Mecca is remembered not only as a military victory, but as a triumph of mercy, forgiveness, and the power of unity. It was a defining moment in the life of Prophet Muhammad PBUH, and a demonstration of the core values that he embodied: compassion, patience, and commitment to peace. His decision to forgive those who had once sought to harm him and his followers speaks to his magnanimity and his unwavering belief in the power of reconciliation. The Prophet PBUH showed that victory was not about defeating one's enemies, but about building a community grounded in faith, justice, and mutual respect. By choosing the path of forgiveness, he demonstrated the transformative power of Islam, a message that sought to heal wounds, build bridges, and bring people together in a shared vision of peace. In the year 632 CE, Prophet Muhammad PBUH embarked on the final pilgrimage of his life, known as the Hajj. This pilgrimage, which took place just months before his passing, was more than a religious obligation. It marked the culmination of his prophetic mission. During this pilgrimage, on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, in the plain of Arafat, the Prophet Muhammad PBUH delivered his farewell sermon, a speech that would resonate through history as a timeless guide for Muslims. It was here, in the presence of over 100,000 of his companions, that the Prophet PBUH conveyed his final message to the Ummah, a message that emphasized equality, unity, justice, and the importance of adhering to the teachings of Islam. The context of the farewell sermon. The farewell sermon took place at a pivotal moment in the history of Islam. The Prophet PBUH had successfully established the foundations of a united Muslim community, and the Arabian Peninsula was on the verge of embracing Islam in its entirety. The message he delivered was not just an address to his companions, but a call to future generations. He stood before the gathered multitude, knowing that his time was drawing to a close, and he sought to leave behind a blueprint for the future of Islam, a set of principles that would guide the Muslims in all matters of faith, governance, and personal conduct. In the sermon, the Prophet PBUH spoke with clarity and conviction, laying down the essential teachings that had shaped the course of his prophetic mission. He began by reminding the Muslims of the fundamental principles of Islam, urging them to uphold the teachings of the Quran and his sunnah, the practices he had demonstrated throughout his life. But his message was also one of profound moral guidance, one that called for justice, mercy, and unity in the face of an ever-changing world. Equality and unity. Among Muslims, one of the most striking themes of the farewell sermon was the message of equality. The Prophet, PBUH, declared that all people, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or social status, were equal in the eyes of Allah. He emphasized that no one was superior to another except by their piety and good deeds. He famously said, "All mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, and a non-Arab has no superiority over an Arab. A white has no superiority over a black, and a black has no superiority over a white. None have superiority over another except by piety and good actions." This declaration was revolutionary in a society that was steeped in tribalism, where social hierarchies were rigid and often oppressive. By proclaiming the equality of all people, the Prophet Muhammad PBUH established a moral foundation for the Muslim community that transcended tribal, racial, and social divisions. It was a call to break down the barriers that had historically separated people and to foster a society where justice and compassion were the guiding principles, adherence to justice and fairness. The Prophet Muhammad's PBUH message was also deeply rooted in justice. He reminded the Muslims of their moral obligations to one another, urging them to uphold the rights of others and to live with fairness and integrity. He said, O people, your lives and your property are sacred to you, like the sanctity of this, your day, ein stay, your month, and your city. Return the goods entrusted to you to their rightful owners. Hurt no one so that no one may hurt you. Remember that you will meet your Lord, and that he will demand an account from you for your deeds. In this part of his sermon, the Prophet, PBUH, emphasized the sanctity of human life and property, reinforcing the Islamic principles of justice, accountability, and the protection of individual rights. His words resonated deeply with the Muslims, for they were a reminder that the pursuit of justice and fairness was not merely an abstract ideal, but a divine command that must be upheld in all aspects of life. The importance of the Quran and Sunnah. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, made it clear in his farewell sermon that the Quran and his Sunnah would be the ultimate guides for the Muslim community. He reminded the Muslims to adhere to these two sources of guidance, for they contained all the teachings necessary to lead a life of righteousness and devotion. I am leaving among you two precious things, the Book of Allah and my Sunnah, and if you adhere to both, you will never go astray. The final message. The farewell sermon concluded with a powerful statement of the Prophet's PBUH mission and the completion of his prophetic role. He asked the gathered Muslims, "Have I not conveyed the message?" To which they responded, "Yes, you have, O Messenger of Allah." He then raised his hands toward the sky and said, "O Allah, bear witness that I have conveyed the message." In that moment, it was clear that the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, had completed the mission entrusted to him by Allah, and that the message of Islam was now firmly established. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, had led the Muslim community with unwavering faith, wisdom, and compassion for over 2 decades. His life was the embodiment of the teachings of Islam, and his leadership had transformed the Arabian Peninsula. As the years passed, the influence of Islam spread far and wide, reaching the hearts of millions. But in the year 632 CE, the inevitable arrived. The Prophet, PBUH, passed away. The emotional impact on the community. The emotional toll of the Prophet's PBUH passing was immeasurable. His companions, who had witnessed the revelations of the Quran, the victories, the trials, and the triumphs alongside him, now found themselves grappling with an unprecedented void. The news spread quickly, and a wave of grief swept through Medina. Umar ibn al-Khattab, one of the Prophet's closest companions, was so overcome with emotion that he initially refused to believe the news, declaring, "Anyone who says that the Prophet has died, I will cut off his head." His reaction was not one of defiance, but of disbelief. It was unimaginable that the Prophet, PBUH, could be gone, but soon the reality set in. The Prophet's body was washed and prepared for burial. The mosque, which had been the center of Islamic life, became a place of mourning. His companions, including Abu Bakr and Ali, along with the rest of the community, offered their final respects. Abu Bakr, who had been the Prophet's closest confidant, stood before the people and addressed them with words of comfort and resolve. "Whoever worships Muhammad, let him know that Muhammad has died. But whoever worships Allah, let him know that Allah is ever living and does not die." Spiritual and moral resilience. Despite the overwhelming sorrow, the loss of the Prophet, PBUH, also became a defining moment for the community. His companions, who had learned from him how to navigate the challenges of life with faith, now turned to the teachings he had left behind, the Quran and the Sunnah. The Prophet's, PBUH, entire life had been an example for them, and it was now their responsibility to carry on his work. The Quran had long been clear that the Prophet, PBUH, was a human being, and like all humans, he was subject to death. Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 34 says, "And we have not granted to any man before you eternity. So if you die, would they be eternal?" While his passing was a profound moment of loss, it was also a reminder that every soul would one day return to Allah. The community's faith was tested, but it was also strengthened. The teachings of Islam, which had been spread through the Prophet's, PBUH, life and words, remained steadfast, offering solace and direction in the face of grief. The transition to the era of the caliphs. In the wake of the Prophet's passing, the Muslim community found itself at a crossroads. The loss of the Prophet, PBUH, left a leadership vacuum, and there was immediate uncertainty about how the community would continue to thrive without his direct guidance. The challenge before the Muslims was not just to preserve the teachings of Islam, but also to ensure that the faith continued to be practiced and spread. The transition from the Prophet's PBUH leadership to the era of the caliphs was crucial for the survival and expansion of Islam. The companions of the Prophet, PBUH, knew that they could not afford to dwell in mourning for long. They understood that the mission of Islam was greater than any individual, and that the community must continue to function under new leadership. The first step in this process was to select a new leader, someone who could guide the community, protect its unity, and continue the work that the Prophet said, PBUH, had started. The question of leadership was a serious one, as the Prophet at PBUH had not explicitly designated a successor. This uncertainty led to a historic gathering in Saqifa, where the companions debated and ultimately chose Abu Bakr, the Prophet's PBUH closest friend and one of the earliest converts to Islam, as the first caliph. The preservation of the Prophet's teachings. The death of the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, left the Muslim community with a clear responsibility to preserve and protect the teachings he had delivered. The companions of the Prophet, PBUH, particularly those closest to him, worked tirelessly to ensure that his teachings, both the Quran and the Sunnah, were preserved for future generations. The hadith, the sayings and actions of the Prophet, PBUH, were compiled and recorded, and the Quran was compiled into a single, standardized text. In the years that followed, the community would continue to grow, both spiritually and territorially. The caliphs, especially the first four, known as the Rashidun, rightly guided, caliphs, would lead the Muslim Ummah through a period of unprecedented expansion, spreading the message of Islam far beyond the Arabian Peninsula. Though the Prophet, PBUH, was no longer physically present, his legacy lived on, guiding the decisions and actions of the Muslim community. Abu Bakr, the first caliph and the unifier. The first caliph, Abu Bakr, was chosen by consensus shortly after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, at the Saqifa of Banu Sa'idah. Although there were debates about leadership, Abu Bakr was widely recognized for his integrity, loyalty, and deep faith in Allah. As the Prophet's closest companion and advisor, he had witnessed firsthand the struggles and triumphs of the Prophet's mission, and he was deeply committed to carrying it forward. One of the first challenges that Abu Bakr faced was the issue of apostasy. After the death of the Prophet, PBUH, some tribes in Arabia reneged on their allegiance to Islam, either by rejecting the faith or withholding zakat, charitable alms. This rebellion threatened to undo the unity that the Prophet, PBUH, had worked so hard to establish. Abu Bakr, however, remained resolute. He delivered a famous speech to the people of Medina, saying, "If they refuse to pay the zakat that they used to pay to the Prophet, I will fight them for it." His determination to maintain the integrity of the Muslim community and uphold the principles of Islam led to a series of military campaigns that successfully re-established the authority of Islam throughout Arabia. Umar ibn al-Khattab, the expander of Islam. Upon the death of Abu Bakr in 634 CE, Umar ibn al-Khattab was chosen as the second caliph. His leadership would prove to be instrumental in the dramatic expansion of Islam beyond the Arabian Peninsula. Known for his strong character, deep faith, and commitment to justice, Umar's rule marked a period of unprecedented growth for the Islamic State. Under Umar's leadership, the Muslim army won a series of decisive battles against the Byzantine and Sasanian empires, two of the most powerful forces in the world at the time. The Battle of Yarmouk in 636 CE was a particularly significant victory, leading to the conquest of Syria and the eventual spread of Islam into Egypt, Persia, and North Africa. By the time of his death in 644 CE, the Islamic Empire had expanded to include vast territories and Islam had taken root in regions far beyond Arabia. Uthman ibn Affan, the compiler of the Quran and the administrator. The third caliph, Uthman ibn Affan, ascended to leadership in 844 CE. His reign saw the continuation of territorial expansion, but it was also marked by significant internal challenges. Uthman, a member of the powerful Umayyad clan, was a man of great wealth and generosity, known for his philanthropic efforts. However, his administration became increasingly controversial due to allegations of nepotism, as he appointed members of his own family to key positions of power. Uthman's most enduring legacy, however, was his role in the compilation and standardization of the Quran. Recognizing that variations in the recitation of the Quran were beginning to emerge as Islam spread across different regions, Uthman ordered the creation of a standardized version of the Quran. He tasked a committee led by Zayd ibn Thabit with collecting the written fragments and oral recitations of the Quran and compiling them into a single standardized text. Copies of the Quran were then sent to the major cities of the Islamic Empire, ensuring that the Quran would be preserved in its original form. This monumental effort ensured that the teachings of Islam would remain consistent and accessible to future generations. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the guardian of justice, following the death of Uthman, Ali ibn Abi Talib, the fourth caliph, ascended to the leadership of the Muslim Ummah. Ali, the cousin and son-in-law of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, was revered for his piety, wisdom, and devotion to justice. His leadership, however, was marked by internal divisions and challenges, particularly from factions within the Muslim community who felt that Uthman's death had not been avenged. One of the most significant events during Ali's caliphate was the Battle of the Camel in 656 CE, fought between Ali's forces and those loyal to Aisha, Talha, and Zubair, three prominent companions of the Prophet, PBUH. This battle arose from political disagreements surrounding the handling of Uthman's assassination and the desire for justice. The battle ended in a bloody confrontation, but it also highlighted the deepening divisions within the Muslim community. In 657 CE, the Battle of Siffin was fought between Ali's forces and those of Muawiyah, the governor of Syria and a relative of Uthman. The battle ended in a stalemate, with both sides agreeing to arbitration. However, this event deepened the schism within the Muslim community, ultimately leading to the emergence of the Kharijites, a radical group that rejected both Ali and Muawiyah as legitimate leaders. The death of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, in 632 CE left the Muslim community in mourning, but also in a position of profound strength. Despite the loss of their beloved leader, the teachings of Islam had taken root deeply within the hearts of the believers. The foundation of faith, justice, and unity that the Prophet, PBUH, had established began to spread rapidly across the Arabian Peninsula and beyond, with the Muslim community determined to carry forward the mission he had started. The role of the rightly guided caliphs. The first four caliphs, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, played a crucial role in the expansion of Islam following the death of the Prophet, PBUH. While their leadership faced internal challenges, it was also characterized by extraordinary military and diplomatic efforts that saw Islam spread far beyond the borders of the Arabian Peninsula. Under the leadership of Abu Bakr, the first caliph, the nascent Islamic State faced immediate internal challenges. Several Arabian tribes, once loyal to the Prophet, PBUH, broke away from the fold after his death. These tribes, known as the apostates, rejected the authority of the new caliph and refused to pay the zakat, charity. Abu Bakr, in his resolve to preserve the unity of the Muslim community, fought a series of battles known as the Ridda Wars, the Wars of Apostasy, against those who sought to abandon Islam. The victories in these battles solidified the political and spiritual unity of the Muslim Ummah, enabling the community to move forward. Once the internal threats had been addressed, Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph, began the military expansion of Islam in earnest. Under Umar's leadership, the Muslim armies achieved decisive victories against the Byzantine and Sasanian empires, two of the most powerful forces in the world at that time. The Battle of Yarmouk 636 CE was a turning point in the spread of Islam, as it resulted in the fall of the Byzantine Empire's control over Syria and opened the door for the Muslims to conquer Egypt, Iraq, and Persia. The spread of Islam in the Fertile Crescent and beyond. The expansion of Islam continued under Uthman ibn Affan, the third caliph, who is remembered for overseeing the further consolidation of the Muslim empire. One of Uthman's most significant contributions was the standardization of the Quran, ensuring its preservation in the same form we have today. This helped maintain the unity of the Muslim community and ensured that the message of Islam would remain consistent across all regions of the growing empire. Uthman also encouraged the spread of Islam beyond the Arabian Peninsula by fostering peaceful missions and supporting the establishment of new Muslim territories. His reign saw the expansion of Islam into parts of North Africa, with Muslim forces advancing into Libya and Tunisia and also into Persia. The impact of the conquests on the spread of Islam. While military conquests were integral to the spread of Islam, the religion's expansion was not solely the result of force. The Muslim armies, unlike the imperial forces of their contemporaries, often ensured that religious freedom was respected. Many conquered peoples, particularly in Persia, Syria, and Egypt, found Islam's message of monotheism, justice, and equality to be a compelling alternative to the hierarchical and polytheistic religions they had practiced before. In areas such as Persia, where Zoroastrianism had long been the dominant faith, the spread of Islam was also a process of cultural exchange. Over time, the majority of the Persian population embraced Islam, and the Persian influence on Islamic civilization, particularly in the fields of science, philosophy, and art, would be profound. Similarly, in Egypt and North Africa, where Christianity had once flourished, the spread of Islam was a gradual process, marked by both conquest and peaceful integration. The strategic position of Egypt as a cultural and intellectual hub allowed Islam to integrate smoothly into the region's existing systems, while providing a solid foundation for the spread of Islamic thought throughout Africa and beyond. Islam also spread through the work of missionaries known as dawah. As the empire expanded, Muslim traders, scholars, and travelers played a crucial role in the peaceful dissemination of Islamic teachings. The establishment of mosques and madrasas, Islamic schools, in new territories ensured that Islamic knowledge was passed down to future generations. These institutions became centers of learning, where people from different cultures and backgrounds could study the Quran, Islamic jurisprudence, and other sciences. The legacy of the early conquests. The early conquests, driven by both military campaigns and peaceful efforts, laid the foundation for the Islamic civilization that would flourish in the centuries to come. The leadership of the rightly guided caliphs provided both the structure and the moral framework that allowed Islam to grow rapidly and become a global religion. By the time of the Umayyad dynasty's rise, which followed the death of Ali in 661 CE, Islam had spread from the Arabian Peninsula to much of the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Europe and Asia. The establishment of a vast empire enabled the exchange of knowledge, ideas, and cultures, leading to a golden age of Islamic civilization. The early years of the Islamic Empire, particularly under the rightly guided caliphs, also fostered the development of Islamic law, Sharia, governance, and social systems that continue to shape the Islamic world today. The Quran and the hadith provided the foundation for all aspects of life, from personal conduct to the governance of the state, ensuring that the values of justice, equality, and morality remained central to the Muslim way of life. The death of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, in 632 CE left the Muslim community in mourning, but also in a position of profound strength. Despite the loss of their beloved leader, the teachings of Islam had taken root deeply within the hearts of the believers. The foundation of faith, justice, and unity that the Prophet, PBUH, had established began to spread rapidly across the Arabian Peninsula and beyond, with the Muslim community determined to carry forward the mission he had started. This period of rapid growth would be marked by both military conquests and peaceful missions, as Islam spread across vast territories, from the Middle East to North Africa and beyond, leaving an indelible mark on world history. The role of the rightly guided caliphs. The first four caliphs, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, played a crucial role in the expansion of Islam following the death of the Prophet, PBUH. While their leadership faced internal challenges, it was also characterized by extraordinary military and diplomatic efforts that saw Islam spread far beyond the borders of the Arabian Peninsula. Under the leadership of Abu Bakr, the first caliph, the nascent Islamic State faced immediate internal challenges. Several Arabian tribes, once loyal to the Prophet, PBUH, broke away from the fold after his death. These tribes, known as the apostates, rejected the authority of the new caliph and refused to pay the zakat charity. Abu Bakr, in his resolve to preserve the unity of the Muslim community, fought a series of battles known as the Ridda Wars, the Wars of Apostasy, against those who sought to abandon Islam. The victories in these battles solidified the political and spiritual unity of the Muslim Ummah, enabling the community to move forward. Once the internal threats had been addressed, Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph, began the military expansion of Islam in earnest. Under Umar's leadership, the Muslim armies achieved decisive victories against the Byzantine and Sasanian empires, two of the most powerful forces in the world at that time. The Battle of Yarmouk, 636 CE, was a turning point in the spread of Islam, as it resulted in the fall of the Byzantine Empire's control over Syria and opened the door for the Muslims to conquer Egypt, Iraq, and Persia. The Muslim forces also swept through North Africa, capturing Egypt and establishing a foothold in Libya and Tunisia. These military conquests were not only a triumph of arms, but also of ideology, as they paved the way for the spread of Islam to new peoples and cultures. Islam was introduced to these regions not only through force, but through the peaceful example of the Muslims' moral conduct, integrity, and justice, the spread of Islam in the Fertile Crescent and beyond. The expansion of Islam continued under Uthman ibn Affan, the third caliph, who is remembered for overseeing the further consolidation of the Muslim empire. One of Uthman's most significant contributions was the standardization of the Quran, ensuring its preservation in the same form we have today. This helped maintain the unity of the Muslim community and ensured that the message of Islam would remain consistent across all regions of the growing empire. Uthman also encouraged the spread of Islam beyond the Arabian Peninsula by fostering peaceful missions and supporting the establishment of new Muslim territories. His reign saw the expansion of Islam into parts of North Africa, with Muslim forces advancing into Libya and Tunisia and also into Persia. However, the rapid expansion of the Muslim empire under Uthman's leadership also sowed the seeds of political discontent. His favouring of the Umayyad clan for key governmental posts led to accusations of nepotism and mismanagement, which eventually contributed to his assassination in 656 CE. His death marked the beginning of a period of internal strife within the Muslim community, particularly during the caliphate of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the fourth caliph. The impact of the conquests on the spread of Islam. While military conquests were integral to the spread of Islam, the religion's expansion was not solely the result of force. The Muslim armies, unlike the imperial forces of their contemporaries, often ensured that religious freedom was respected. Many conquered peoples, particularly in Persia, Syria, and Egypt, found Islam's message of monotheism, justice, and equality to be a compelling alternative to the hierarchical and polytheistic religions they had practiced before. In areas such as Persia, where Zoroastrianism had long been the dominant faith, the spread of Islam was also a process of cultural exchange. Over time, the majority of the Persian population embraced Islam, and the Persian influence on Islamic civilization, particularly in the fields of science, philosophy, and art, would be profound. Similarly, in Egypt and North Africa, where Christianity had once flourished, the spread of Islam was a gradual process, marked by both conquest and peaceful integration. The strategic position of Egypt as a cultural and intellectual hub allowed Islam to integrate smoothly into the region's existing systems, while providing a solid foundation for the spread of Islamic thought throughout Africa and beyond. Islam also spread through the work of missionaries, known as dawah. As the empire expanded, Muslim traders, scholars, and travelers played a crucial role in the peaceful dissemination of Islamic teachings. The establishment of mosques and madrasas, Islamic artikis, schools, in new territories ensured that Islamic knowledge was passed down to future generations. These institutions became centers of learning where people from different cultures and backgrounds could study the Quran, Islamic jurisprudence, and other sciences. The legacy of the early conquests. The early conquests, driven by both military campaigns and peaceful efforts, laid the foundation for the Islamic civilization that would flourish in the centuries to come. The leadership of the rightly guided caliphs provided both the structure and the moral framework that allowed Islam to grow rapidly and become a global religion. By the time of the Umayyad dynasty's rise, which followed the death of Ali in 661 CE, Islam had spread from the Arabian Peninsula to much of the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Europe and Asia. The establishment of a vast empire enabled the exchange of knowledge, ideas, and cultures, leading to a golden age of Islamic civilization. The early years of the Islamic Empire, particularly under the rightly guided caliphs, also fostered the development of Islamic law, sharia, governance, and social systems that continue to shape the Islamic world today. The Quran and the hadith provided the foundation for all aspects of life, from personal conduct to the governance of the state, ensuring that the values of justice, equality, and morality remain central to the Muslim way of life. The events of the Battle of Karbala, fought on the 10th of Muharram in the year 680 CE, remain one of the most poignant and defining moments in Islamic history. The martyrdom of Imam Hussein ibn Ali, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, is not just a tale of military defeat, but a powerful narrative of faith, sacrifice, and resistance to tyranny. The battle and the events leading up to it have had a profound and lasting impact on Islamic spirituality, particularly in shaping the beliefs and practices of millions of Muslims worldwide. The background to Karbala. The Battle of Karbala did not occur in isolation. It was the culmination of growing political and religious tensions within the Muslim community, particularly after the assassination of the third caliph, Uthman ibn Affan, and the subsequent civil wars that tore the caliphate apart. After the death of Uthman, Ali ibn Abi Talib, the cousin and son-in-law of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, became the fourth caliph. His leadership was contested by many, and following his assassination in 661 CE, the caliphate passed to the Umayyad dynasty under the leadership of Muawiyah. Muawiyah's rule marked the beginning of a new era in Islamic governance, one that was marked by the centralization of power in the hands of the Umayyads, a family that many saw as corrupt and far removed from the ideals of the early Islamic community. This growing disenchantment with the Umayyad Caliphate reached its peak with the succession of Yazid ibn Muawiyah, Muawiyah's son. Yazid's appointment was viewed by many as illegitimate, particularly by the family of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, who believed that leadership of the Muslim community should be based on righteousness and piety rather than political power. Imam Hussein, the son of Ali and the grandson of the Prophet, PBUH, became the figurehead of the opposition to Yazid's rule. Hussein's rejection of Yazid's authority was not just political, it was a matter of principle. Hussein believed that the caliphate had become a tool of oppression and tyranny, and he could not, in good conscience, support a ruler who represented corruption and injustice. The journey to Karbala. In 680 CE, Hussein, along with his family and a small group of loyal companions, set out from Medina to Kufa, a city in present-day Iraq, where a group of Muslims had invited him to take up their cause and lead them against Yazid. Hussein's journey was not one of conquest or rebellion in the traditional sense. It was an effort to restore the true values of Islam and protect the rights of the oppressed. He had no intention of seeking power for himself, but rather to act as a guardian of justice and the Islamic principles that Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, had instilled. Along the way, Hussein and his companions were intercepted by Yazid's army, which vastly outnumbered them. Despite the overwhelming odds, Hussein refused to surrender or pledge allegiance to Yazid, for doing so would mean compromising the very principles of justice, truth, and piety that he held dear. Hussein's stand was not just about opposition to a corrupt ruler, it was a stance against oppression, tyranny, and the abandonment of the true teachings of Islam. The family and companions of Hussein were surrounded and forced to camp at Karbala, a barren desert plain near the banks of the Euphrates River. As the days passed, the situation grew more dire. Yazid's forces cut off their access to water, hoping to force Hussein and his companions into submission. Despite this, Hussein remained resolute in his determination to uphold justice and righteousness. The tragic day of Karbala. On the 10th of Muharram, the battle that would change the course of Islamic history took place. Hussein, knowing the odds were insurmountable, still chose to face Yazid's army with bravery and faith. He stood firm, and even as the battle raged around him, he never lost sight of his higher calling. His companions, including his half-brother Abbas ibn Ali, his sons and his supporters, fought valiantly but were martyred one by one, with Hussein witnessing their sacrifice. In the end, Hussein himself was struck by an arrow, and he fell to the ground, his life slowly slipping away. Imam Hussein's martyrdom was not just the death of a man, it was the ultimate act of defiance against tyranny and injustice. It was a symbolic victory of spiritual truth over worldly power. Hussein's stand at Karbala became a beacon of resistance for generations of Muslims, especially for those who faced oppression and injustice. The martyrdom of Hussein and the tragedy of Karbala have become central themes in Islamic spirituality, particularly in the Shia tradition. The events are commemorated annually during Ashura, the 10th of Muharram, when Muslims around the world mourn Hussein's sacrifice and reflect on the lessons of the battle. The ritual of mourning, known as matam, is observed in many cultures, with processions, recitations of elegies, and reenactments of the battle. This observance serves as a reminder of the timeless struggle for justice and righteousness, and of the sacrifices that are often required to uphold these ideals, the spiritual legacy of Karbala. The legacy of Karbala goes far beyond the physical loss of Imam Hussein and his companions. It has shaped the way Muslims understand the concepts of justice, sacrifice, and devotion to faith. The martyrdom of Hussein is often viewed as a spiritual triumph because his stand embodied the core values of Islam: truth, justice, and the unwavering commitment to the will of Allah, even in the face of certain death. Hussein's refusal to compromise on his principles, despite the overwhelming odds and the threats to his life, is seen as the ultimate act of moral courage. His sacrifice serves as a guiding light for those who face oppression, injustice, and tyranny in their own lives. In the face of adversity, the message of Karbala is clear: never bow to oppression and always uphold the values of truth, righteousness, and justice. The impact on Islamic thought and identity. The Battle of Karbala and the martyrdom of Imam Hussein have had a profound impact on the shaping of Islamic thought and identity, particularly in terms of the relationship between leadership, justice, and resistance. Hussein's sacrifice is often cited as the ultimate rejection of tyranny, and his message has inspired countless movements for justice throughout history. The idea that the Muslim community must never compromise on the core values of Islam, even in the face of overwhelming adversity, continues to resonate in the hearts of millions. Karbala is more than just a historical event. It is a spiritual and moral paradigm that continues to guide the hearts and actions of Muslims around the world. It is a reminder that the fight for justice, truth, and righteousness is ongoing, and that even in the darkest moments, one's faith and commitment to those values can light the way. The Quran, the holy book of Islam, stands as the most significant and revered text in the Muslim world. It is considered the literal word of God as revealed to Prophet Muhammad PBUH over a period of 23 years. The preservation and compilation of the Quran is a remarkable story that reflects the dedication of the early Muslim community to safeguard the message that had been entrusted to them. This task was not a simple one, as it required not only the meticulous recording of revelations, but also the prevention of any potential alterations to ensure its purity for generations to come. The most pivotal moment in this process came under the leadership of Caliph Uthman ibn Affan in the mid-7th century, the early preservation of the Quran. During the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, the Quran was revealed in parts over time in various circumstances. The Prophet, PBUH, would receive revelations from Angel Gabriel, that were then memorized by his companions and written down on various materials such as parchment, leaves, stones, and animal skins. However, the Quran was not yet compiled into a single complete book during the Prophet's PBUH lifetime. Instead, it existed in fragments, preserved both in written form and, more importantly, in the memories of the many companions who had memorized it, known as Hafiz, those who have committed the entire Quran to memory. After the death of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, the preservation of the Quran became a matter of utmost importance. The early Muslim community, particularly under the leadership of Caliph Abu Bakr, recognized the potential dangers to the Quran's preservation, especially after the Battle of Yamamah in 632 CE, where many of the Quran's memorizers were martyred. This loss of life prompted the first formal effort to compile the Quran into a single book. Abu Bakr tasked Zayd ibn Thabit, a scribe of the Prophet, PBUH, with gathering the Quranic revelations from the various written fragments and verifying them with the oral traditions. The result of this effort was the first compiled Quranic manuscript, which was preserved by Abu Bakr and later passed on to Caliph Umar and finally to Hafsa, the daughter of Umar ibn al-Khattab and the widow of the Prophet, and PBUH. The need for standardization. By the time Caliph Uthman ibn Affan assumed the caliphate in 44 CE, the Islamic Empire had expanded rapidly, incorporating diverse regions such as Syria, Iraq, Persia, Egypt, and North Africa. As Islam spread, new Muslim converts and different tribes began to recite the Quran in different ways, sometimes due to regional dialects and variations in pronunciation. This posed a serious risk to the uniformity and integrity of the Quranic text. To address this issue, Uthman recognized that a unified, standardized version of the Quran was necessary to prevent disputes and divisions within the Muslim community. The differences in recitation were creating confusion, and there was a fear that the purity of the Quran might be compromised over time. Uthman decided that the Quran needed to be compiled into a single standardized version that could be universally accepted and used throughout the growing Islamic Empire. The compilation of the standard Quran. In around 650 CE, Uthman ordered the creation of a standardized text of the Quran. To accomplish this, he sent a committee of experts led by Zayd ibn Thabit, the same scribe who had overseen the initial compilation under Abu Bakr. This committee was tasked with transcribing the Quran from the Pole manuscript preserved by Hafsa, ensuring that it was copied accurately and in accordance with the oral traditions of the Prophet, PBUH. The committee worked diligently to ensure that the Quran was transcribed without any variation, following the exact order and wording of the revelations as they had been received by Prophet Muhammad, PBUH. After the transcription was completed, Uthman sent copies of this standardized Quran to the major centers of the Islamic world, including Mecca, Medina, Kufa, Basra, and Damascus, to ensure that all Muslims were using the same version of the Quran. The Quran was carefully checked and cross-referenced with the knowledge of the Hafiz, the memorizers of the Quran, and the written fragments to ensure its accuracy. Any discrepancies in recitation or transcription were addressed and corrected, and the committee ensured that the final version of the Quran was consistent in its text and recitation. The impact of Uthman's standardization. The preservation and standardization of the Quran under Caliph Uthman had a profound and lasting impact on the Muslim world. The Quran, in its finalized form, became a unifying force for the Muslim Ummah, ensuring that the message of Islam would be transmitted consistently across generations and geographic regions. The unity that resulted from Uthman's standardization of the Quran helped maintain the integrity of the faith and its practices as Islam continued to spread. The Uthmanic Codex, the standardized Quran, compiled under Uthman's orders, remains the basis for all Quranic texts today. It preserved the integrity of the Quranic text for more than 1,400 years, and it continues to be memorized and recited by millions of Muslims around the world. The accuracy of the text and its preservation in its original form is seen as a miracle in Islamic tradition, as it is believed that Allah Himself has promised to protect the Quran from corruption, as stated in Surah Al-Hijr verse 9. Indeed, it is we who sent down the Quran, and indeed, we will be its guardian. The legacy of Uthman's contribution. The standardization of the Quran under Caliph Uthman not only preserved the Quranic text, but also ensured its transmission for future generations. This act solidified the Quran's role as the central source of guidance for Muslims and helped maintain the unity of the Muslim community. It became the foundation of Islamic law, ethics, and spirituality, providing a clear and consistent framework for believers. Uthman's decision to preserve the Quran in its original form was a momentous contribution to the Islamic world, ensuring that the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, would continue to guide the Muslim Ummah for centuries to come. The Quran's preservation under Uthman's leadership stands as a testament to the commitment of the early Muslim community to uphold the integrity of their faith and its sacred text. The intellectual flourishing in the early Islamic world. Following the establishment of the Islamic caliphates, the Muslim world experienced an intellectual and cultural renaissance that was fueled by the early Islamic principles of seeking knowledge and the importance of learning. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, himself had emphasized the pursuit of knowledge, declaring that seeking knowledge was an obligation for every Muslim. This spirit of inquiry and intellectual curiosity became a cornerstone of Islamic civilization. Under the Abbasid Caliphate, with its capital in Baghdad, the House of Wisdom, Bayt al-Hikmah, was established in the 8th century. This institution became a center of learning and intellectual exchange, where scholars from various parts of the world, including the Islamic world, Greece, Persia, India, and beyond, came together to translate, study, and build upon the knowledge of previous civilizations. Mathematics and astronomy. One of the most significant contributions of the Islamic Golden Age was in the field of mathematics. Muslim scholars expanded upon earlier mathematical concepts and introduced new techniques that would later shape the development of modern mathematics. The Persian mathematician Al-Khwarizmi, often referred to as the father of algebra, wrote foundational works that introduced the systematic solution of linear and quadratic equations. His book, Al-Kitab al-Mukhtasar fi Hisab al-Jabr wal-Muqabala, is where the term algebra originates, and it remains one of the cornerstones of mathematical study. Al-Khwarizmi's contributions to mathematics also included algorithms, the basis of which would eventually lead to the development of computer science. His work on arithmetic and algorithms influenced both the Islamic world and Europe during the Middle Ages, and his ideas remain integral to modern computing. Islamic scholars also made groundbreaking strides in astronomy. Figures like al-Battani, al-Farghani, and Ibn al-Haytham made significant advances in understanding the cosmos. Al-Battani, for instance, made accurate measurements of the length of the solar year, and he was among the first to calculate the Earth's axial tilt. His observations greatly improved the astronomical tables of the time, which were used for navigation and the determination of prayer times across the Islamic world. Ibn al-Haytham, often regarded as the father of optics, made significant contributions to the understanding of light, vision, and colour. His work Kitab al-Manazir, Book of Optics, challenged the ancient Greek theory of vision and laid the groundwork for modern optics. His experiments on reflection, refraction, and the nature of light influenced later scientists such as Roger Bacon and Johannes Kepler. Medicine and healthcare. The Islamic Golden Age also saw monumental advancements in medicine, with Muslim scholars synthesizing knowledge from Greek, Roman, Persian, and Indian medical traditions. while also making original contributions of their own. Ibn Sina, Avicenna, perhaps the most renowned figure in Islamic medicine, wrote the Canon of Medicine, a medical encyclopedia that became a standard textbook in both the Islamic world and Europe for centuries. His work was foundational in the development of both diagnostic and therapeutic practices in medieval Europe and beyond. Ibn Sina's influence was not limited to the realm of medicine alone. His contributions to philosophy, particularly his work on the relationship between faith and reason, deeply influenced later Islamic and European thought. Another significant figure was Al-Razi, whose work in medicine and chemistry revolutionized the field. Al-Razi is credited with discovering sulfuric acid and refining the process of distillation. He was also one of the first to distinguish between smallpox and measles, and his medical texts were widely used throughout Europe. Philosophy and the transmission of knowledge. In the realm of philosophy, Islamic thinkers played an important role in bridging the gap between Greek thought and later Western philosophy. Scholars such as Al-Farabi, Ibn Rushd, Averroes, and Ibn Sina worked on reconciling the ideas of Plato and Aristotle with Islamic theology. They emphasized reason, logic, and the pursuit of knowledge as a means to understand both the natural world and the divine. Al-Farabi, known as the second teacher after Aristotle, made significant contributions to political philosophy and ethics, while Ibn Rushd, Averroes, is remembered for his extensive commentaries on Aristotle's works. His interpretations of Aristotle's philosophy would later be rediscovered in medieval Europe and had a profound influence on thinkers like Thomas Aquinas. In addition to philosophy, Islamic scholars also made contributions to various other fields, including geography, chemistry, and literature. The pioneering work of al-Biruni, who made contributions to the understanding of the Earth's rotation and its distance from the Moon, set the stage for later developments in both geography and astronomy. Meanwhile, al-Tusi, a Persian mathematician and astronomer, contributed to the development of trigonometry and was instrumental in the creation of the first astronomical observatory in Iran. The role of Islamic scholars in preserving and advancing knowledge. The contributions made by Muslim scholars during the Islamic Golden Age were not only confined to the fields of science and philosophy, but also to the very transmission of knowledge itself. The establishment of libraries, translation movements, and institutions like the House of Wisdom in Baghdad played a critical role in ensuring that knowledge was passed down and refined over generations. Many classical Greek texts were translated into Arabic during this period, and scholars in the Islamic world were instrumental in preserving and building upon this body of knowledge. When Europe entered the Dark Ages, much of the knowledge of the ancient world had been forgotten or lost. However, thanks to the intellectual activity in the Islamic world, many of these works were preserved, translated, and eventually transmitted to Europe, where they helped spark the Renaissance, legacy of the Islamic Golden Age. The intellectual achievements of the Islamic Golden Age had a lasting impact not only on the Islamic world, but on the entire course of world history. The contributions made by Muslim scholars laid the foundation for many of the scientific and intellectual advances that would follow. Their work influenced later developments in Europe and helped shape the modern world. The preservation and enhancement of knowledge during this period provided the intellectual framework for the Renaissance, the Age of Enlightenment, and the rise of modern science. The principles of inquiry, critical thinking, and the pursuit of knowledge that were central to the Islamic Golden Age remain relevant today. The intellectual legacy of this period continues to inspire scientists, scholars, and thinkers worldwide, reminding us of the immense contributions made by the scholars of the Islamic world. The legacy of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, is vast, transcending time and space, touching the hearts and lives of millions of people across the world. His influence is not confined to the 23 years during which he received divine revelation, nor is it limited to the early years of Islamic history. Prophet Muhammad's PBUH teachings continue to inspire and guide individuals, communities, and nations, shaping both spiritual and moral frameworks that resonate deeply in every era. Spiritual legacy, a connection to Allah. At the heart of Prophet Muhammad's PBUH legacy is his deep, unwavering connection to Allah. His life was a testament to complete submission to God's will. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, was not merely a messenger, he was a living example of piety, devotion, and the embodiment of the Quranic revelations. His life offers a practical blueprint for how Muslims should relate to Allah, with sincerity, humility, patience, and trust. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, taught the importance of maintaining a personal relationship with Allah through acts of worship like prayer, salat, fasting, psalm, charity, zakat, and pilgrimage, hajj. Yet beyond these outward acts of worship, the Prophet, PBUH, demonstrated how to live with a heart filled with faith, devotion, and gratitude to God in every aspect of life. His final words, "O Allah, I have fulfilled my mission," signify the fulfillment of his purpose on earth, to call people to the oneness of Allah, to guide them toward righteousness, and to establish a community of believers grounded in faith and justice. This deep devotion to God became the cornerstone of his spiritual legacy, urging Muslims throughout history to seek closeness to Allah in every moment of their lives. Moral legacy, justice, mercy, and compassion. Beyond his spiritual leadership, Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, is remembered for the high moral standards he set for humanity. His teachings on justice, equality, and mercy have shaped Islamic ethics and continue to guide Muslims in their personal and communal lives. He emphasized that the pursuit of moral excellence was a crucial aspect of one's faith, and that true belief was demonstrated through action. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, is often described as the mercy to the worlds, rahmatan lil alameen. His compassion toward others, whether they were friends, family, or strangers, is legendary. He was a model of gentleness, patience, awe, and kindness, even to those who persecuted him. His forgiveness and generosity to those who wronged him, like his pardon of the people of Mecca after its conquest, showed that mercy was not just a virtue, but a transformative power for healing broken relationships and uniting people. The Prophet's teachings on justice were revolutionary in a society marked by inequality, tribalism, and social divisions. He taught that all people were equal in the eyes of Allah, regardless of their race, tribe, or social status. His declaration that an Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, and that a white has no superiority over a black, is a powerful reminder of the Islamic principle of equality. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, as a model for personal conduct. Perhaps one of the most lasting aspects of Prophet Muhammad's PBUH legacy is his role as a model for personal conduct. Muslims are encouraged to follow his example, not only in religious practice, but also in how they interact with others, how they work, and how they live their daily lives. The Prophet's character was the practical embodiment of the Quranic teachings. His honesty and integrity earned him the title of Al-Amin, the trustworthy, even before he received the revelation. His respect for others, his humility, and his ability to forgive even his harshest opponents made him a beloved leader. He was not just a political figure or a military leader, but a teacher, a counselor, and a family man who showed Muslims the importance of kindness, respect, and service to others. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, also emphasized the importance of knowledge, advocating for the pursuit of learning and wisdom. He stated, "Seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim." He encouraged his followers to acquire knowledge in all fields, from religious studies to the sciences, as a means to better serve humanity. This quest for knowledge, combined with his teachings on justice and morality, helped shape the intellectual and cultural flourishing that would later define the Islamic Golden Age. Unity and community building. Another profound aspect of the Prophet's legacy is the sense of community, or ummah, that he fostered. He emphasized the importance of brotherhood, unity, and collective responsibility. Despite the diversity of the early Muslim community, the Prophet, PBUH, managed to unite people from different tribes, ethnicities, and backgrounds under the banner of Islam. He taught that the bonds of faith were stronger than tribal and racial affiliations. fostering an inclusive community built on mutual care, respect, and support. The Prophet, PBUH, taught that no one is an island. Muslims are part of a larger community that is responsible for the welfare of others. This sense of collective responsibility is reflected in the teachings of Islam, where caring for the poor, the sick, and the oppressed is seen as an essential part of one's faith. The lasting spiritual and moral influence Prophet Muhammad's PBUH legacy extends beyond his lifetime, influencing not only the Muslim world, but also the broader course of human history. His teachings continue to inspire millions of Muslims, guiding their relationship with Allah and their conduct with others. His life offers a model of perfect balance between devotion to God, moral excellence, leadership, and service to humanity. His spiritual legacy remains alive in the hearts of those who follow his example, whether through acts of prayer, charity, or kindness. His moral teachings continue to shape Islamic jurisprudence, ethics, and the ongoing quest for justice in Muslim societies. His emphasis on equality, mercy, and compassion remains a touchstone for all who strive for a just and harmonious world. Through his teachings, the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, left an indelible mark on the world. His life continues to be a source of guidance, inspiration, and reflection for Muslims around the globe, as they strive to embody his principles of faith, justice, and kindness in their own lives. The role of women in early Islam was revolutionary for its time. Before the advent of Islam, women in the Arabian Peninsula were often treated as property, denied basic rights, and subjected to oppressive cultural practices. However, the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, brought a transformative shift in the status and rights of women, marking the beginning of a progressive stance on gender equality and empowerment that had far-reaching consequences for society. Women's rights in marriage and family life. One of the most significant areas where Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, made strides for women's rights was in the realm of marriage. Before Islam, women had very little control over their marriages, with many being forced into unions without their consent. However, Islam established clear principles of mutual consent and respect in marriage. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, made it clear that both the woman and the man must agree to the marriage contract. He famously said, "A woman who is asked for her hand in marriage has the right to consent or reject." This principle of mutual consent was revolutionary in a society where women had previously been treated as commodities. Furthermore, Islam granted women the right to a dowry, MHR, a gift from the husband to the wife, given freely and without coercion. The dowry was her personal property, which she could use as she saw fit. This marked a significant shift from the pre-Islamic practice, wasa'id, where women were often not given any property rights. The Prophet, PBUH, reinforced this right by setting a standard that a woman should never be forced into a marriage or given to a man without her explicit consent. Education and empowerment. One of the most striking aspects of Prophet Muhammad's PBUH teachings regarding women was his strong encouragement for them to seek knowledge. In a society where education was typically reserved for men, the Prophet, PBUH, declared that the pursuit of knowledge was a duty for every Muslim, male or female. He famously said, "Seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim." The Prophet, PBUH, also encouraged women to take part in religious, intellectual, and social discussions. Many women in early Islam became scholars, teachers, and religious leaders in their own right. Aisha bint Abi Bakr, the Prophet's wife, was one of the most prominent figures in Islamic scholarship, renowned for her deep understanding of the Quran and hadith. She narrated over 2,000 hadiths, sayings and actions of the Prophet, and her contributions to Islamic jurisprudence are still highly regarded. The rights of women in inheritance. Before the advent of Islam, women were often excluded from inheritance, with property passing solely to male heirs. Islam revolutionized this practice by granting women the right to inherit property. While the share of inheritance was generally smaller than that of male heirs, women were explicitly granted a legal right to inherit, which was a significant step toward economic independence. The Quran states in Surah An-Nisa, verse 7, "For men is a share of what the parents and close relatives leave, and for women is a share of what the parents and close relatives leave." Women's role in society. Prophet Muhammad's PBUH teachings also emphasized the importance of women's roles in society, particularly in nurturing the next generation. Women in early Islam were seen as the backbone of the family unit and, by extension, the society at large. The Prophet, PBUH, acknowledged the critical role of mothers, famously stating, "Paradise lies at the feet of mothers." This was a powerful recognition of the value of women as caretakers, educators, and nurturers of children, underscoring the importance of their role in shaping the moral and spiritual foundation of future generations. Islam also granted women the right to work and earn a living. Women such as Khadija bint Khuwaylid, the Prophet's first wife, who was a successful businesswoman, exemplified the entrepreneurial spirit encouraged by Islam. Khadija's success and influence were significant in early Islamic history, as she supported the Prophet, PBUH, both financially and emotionally during the early years of his prophethood. Her example showed that women were not only permitted, but encouraged to engage in commerce and contribute to the welfare of society. The Prophet's personal relationships with women. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, served as a personal model for treating women with respect and dignity. His relationships with his wives, daughters, and other women in the community reflected his belief in equality and mutual respect. He was known for his kindness, gentleness, and patience with his wives and daughters, which set a powerful example for the men of his time. Legacy of women's empowerment in Islam. The legacy of the Prophet Muhammad's PBUH, progressive stance on women's rights, laid the foundation for the empowerment of women in Islamic societies. His teachings continue to shape the way women are treated in the Muslim world today, influencing debates on women's rights, education, and participation in the workforce, politics, and religious leadership. However, the implementation of these rights has varied across different Islamic societies, and much work remains to be done in ensuring that women fully benefit from the rights and privileges that Islam grants them. Despite challenges, the legacy of the Prophet's teachings remains a powerful force for positive change, as Muslim women around the world continue to fight for their rights and make significant strides in fields ranging from politics to business, from education to medicine. The foundation of Islamic law, known as Sharia, is one of the most significant legacies of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, and his teachings. Sharia is not a monolithic body of laws, but rather a comprehensive system that encompasses all aspects of life, from personal conduct to social interactions, from worship to governance. It is rooted in the Quran and the hadith, the sayings and practices of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, which serve as the primary sources for Islamic jurisprudence. The Prophet's PBUH role in establishing and implementing Islamic law was not just as a legislator, but also as a model for how these laws should be applied in everyday life. The sources of Sharia law. The primary sources of Sharia are twofold: the Quran and the Hadith. The Quran, as the direct word of Allah revealed to Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, the Quran is the supreme source of Islamic law. It provides the general principles and guidelines for how Muslims should live, addressing everything from worship and morality to justice and social conduct. Verses in the Quran were revealed in specific circumstances and often addressed particular issues of the time, but their universal and eternal principles have been used as the foundation for Islamic legal thought. The Hadith. The Hadith are the sayings, actions, and approvals of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, recorded by his companions. These texts serve as a supplement to the Quran, providing detailed interpretations and explanations of how the Quranic principles should be applied in real life. The Hadith not only provide guidance on worship and spirituality, but also on social, economic, and political issues. The Prophet, PBUH, was an exemplar in how to live by the divine law, and his actions became the practical demonstration of how the teachings of the Quran should be understood and applied. The role of the Prophet, PBUH, in establishing Islamic law. During his lifetime, Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, was not just a spiritual guide, but also a lawgiver and a judge. The Prophet, PBUH, received revelations from Allah that addressed the challenges and issues of his community, and he implemented these laws in both personal and social matters. His role as a judge was particularly important in the early years of the Islamic community, as he helped resolve disputes and uphold justice in the growing Muslim society. The Prophet's PBUH legal rulings covered a wide range of issues, from personal matters such as marriage, inheritance, and contracts, to larger social concerns such as criminal justice, warfare, and governance. His approach to justice was based on fairness, equality, and the application of divine wisdom. For example, in matters of punishment, the Prophet, PBUH, emphasized the importance of evidence, fairness, and due process. He upheld the principles of justice even when it was difficult or unpopular, showing that the law must be applied impartially, without favoritism or corruption. The implementation of Sharia in the early Islamic State. The early Islamic State, established under Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, in Medina, served as the model for how Sharia was to be implemented in society. The Constitution of Medina, a document drafted by the Prophet, PBUH, laid out the framework for governance and the legal structure of the Islamic State. It emphasized justice, cooperation, and mutual respect among the various communities in Medina, including Muslims, Jews, and other tribal groups. Sharia law was implemented not only in the spiritual domain, but also in the political, economic, and social spheres. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, established a system of justice that allowed for the resolution of disputes, the protection of individual rights, and the establishment of a fair and just society. His leadership was characterized by his role as the ultimate authority in matters of religious and legal significance, with his decisions setting the precedent for future generations. The spread of Sharia. After the Prophet's death. After the death of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, the task of continuing the implementation and development of Sharia law was passed on to the caliphs, starting with Abu Bakr. During the early years of the Caliphate, Islamic law was applied across the Arabian Peninsula and the newly conquered territories. Under Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph, the Islamic State expanded significantly, and the foundations of Sharia law were implemented across vast new lands, including Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and North Africa. The spread of Islam to new regions meant that Sharia had to adapt to different cultures, societies, and legal systems. The early caliphs, particularly Umar, were deeply concerned with maintaining the integrity of Islamic law while also ensuring that it could be applied in diverse contexts. Umar's leadership was characterized by his commitment to justice, ensuring that Sharia was applied fairly and consistently in both religious and civil matters. The process of legal reasoning and interpretation, fiqh, also developed during this period, as scholars began to address new legal issues that arose in the expanding Muslim world. The differences in interpretation led to the formation of various schools of Islamic jurisprudence, such as the Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali schools. These schools provided diverse approaches to interpreting Sharia law, but all were grounded in the Quran and hadith, Sharia law in the modern world. While the foundations of Sharia law were laid during the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, its application and development have continued throughout Islamic history. Today, Sharia is understood and applied in various ways across the Muslim world, from the full implementation of Islamic law in countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran, to countries that use Sharia as a basis for family law, criminal law, or civil matters. The core principles of Sharia, justice, equality, and compassion, continue to guide Muslims in their daily lives, and the implementation of Islamic law remains a topic of discussion and reform in many parts of the world. While the application of Sharia law can vary based on cultural, political, and social contexts, its fundamental principles remain rooted in the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, who provided the moral and legal framework for a just and equitable society. The Quranic foundation for unity. At the heart of Islamic unity is the message of the Quran, which, under the guidance of Prophet Muhammad PBUH, emphasized the oneness of the Muslim community, or ummah. The Quran repeatedly calls for believers to unite under the banner of faith in Allah and His Messenger, emphasizing that true strength lies in this unity. In Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah says, "Indeed, this ummah of yours is one ummah, and I am your Lord, so worship me." Quran 21:92. This verse, among many others, underscores the importance of unity in Islam. Prophet Muhammad PBUH made it clear that despite the diversity of the Muslim community in terms of race, ethnicity, and social status, all Muslims were brothers and sisters in faith. His teachings about equality and brotherhood were revolutionary at the time, breaking down tribal and racial divisions that had existed for centuries. The Prophet's PBUH example of brotherhood and tolerance. The Prophet PBUH was the epitome of humility and brotherhood, and he demonstrated through his actions how to bridge divides and foster unity. One of his key principles was the creation of strong, respectful bonds between Muslims of different tribes and backgrounds. Upon migrating to Medina, Prophet Muhammad PBUH established the Mu'akkah brotherhood between the emigrants from Mecca, Muhajirun, and the helpers from Medina, Ansar. This bond was a practical manifestation of his teachings on unity, as it brought together people from diverse backgrounds, including former rivals, into a close-knit community. The Prophet, PBUH, also taught that religious differences should not divide the community. In Medina, the Constitution of Medina established a pluralistic society where Muslims, Jews, and other groups lived together with mutual respect for each other's beliefs. The Prophet, PBUH, recognized the importance of tolerance and cooperation among different communities, laying the foundation for religious freedom in Islam. Prophet Muhammad's, PBUH, treatment of women, minorities, and those from lower social classes also reflects his commitment to unity. He fought against the prevailing norms of his time that marginalized people and created divisions based on gender, social status, and ethnicity. Through his words and actions, the Prophet, PBUH, consistently upheld the principle that all Muslims, regardless of their status, should be treated with dignity and respect. The call for unity in diversity, a global Muslim community. Today, the global Muslim community encompasses people of different ethnicities, languages, cultures, and traditions. From the bustling streets of Cairo to the highlands of Indonesia, from the deserts of the Middle East to the bustling cities of Europe and North America, Muslims are united by their shared faith in Allah and their adherence to the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH. The unity that the Prophet, PBUH, envisioned for the Muslim Ummah remains a guiding principle for Muslims worldwide, even in the face of modern challenges. One of the most striking aspects of the Muslim world is its cultural diversity. The Quran and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, recognize this diversity as a strength rather than a weakness. In Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah says, "O mankind, indeed we have created you from male and female, and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you." Quran 49:13. Islamic practices that foster unity. The core practices of Islam also promote unity among Muslims, regardless of their cultural differences. The 5 pillars of Islam, Shahada, faith, Salat, prayer, zakat, charity, Sawm, fasting, and Hajj, pilgrimage, are universal practices that bind Muslims together in worship, regardless of where they are from or what language they speak. Salat, or prayer, is a key unifying practice. Muslims are required to pray 5 times a day, and during these prayers, they face the Kaaba in Mecca, symbolizing the unity of the Muslim world. Whether in Jakarta, Istanbul, or New York, Muslims pray together as one global community, standing shoulder to shoulder, regardless of their differences. The Hajj pilgrimage is perhaps the most powerful demonstration of Islamic unity. Every year, millions of Muslims from all over the world come together in Mecca to perform the rites of Hajj. These pilgrims, representing a wide range of ethnicities, cultures, and languages, all come together to worship Allah in the same way, unified in their shared devotion. Challenges to unity in the Muslim world. While the ideal of unity remains central to the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, the Muslim world faces challenges that threaten this unity. Political divisions, sectarian conflicts, and cultural differences have sometimes led to fragmentation and strife within the Ummah. The Sunni-Shia divide, for instance, has been a source of tension in certain regions, leading to conflict and division. Similarly, the modern geopolitical landscape, marked by international conflicts and regional rivalries, has at times further divided the Muslim world. The role of the Muslim Ummah. Today. In today's world, the principles of unity that Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, taught continue to be vital. The global Muslim community, while diverse in its cultural expressions, remains united in its faith, its adherence to the teachings of the Prophet, PBUH, and its commitment to social justice, peace, and the well-being of all people. The shared values of justice, compassion, and mutual respect that the Prophet, PBUH, promoted are more relevant than ever in a world that is increasingly interconnected, yet divided by differences. The example set by Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, challenges Muslims today to look beyond their differences and to work together for the common good of humanity. Whether it's through fostering social justice, providing humanitarian aid, or promoting interfaith dialogue, the Muslim Ummah has a unique opportunity to reflect the unity in diversity that was exemplified by the Prophet, PBUH. Prayer, or salah, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and it is central to the life of every Muslim. It is not only an act of worship, but a spiritual practice that connects a Muslim directly with Allah, providing moments of reflection, humility, and gratitude throughout the day. The significance of prayer in Islam cannot be overstated. It is the foundation of a Muslim's daily life, shaping their spiritual, social, and personal well-being. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, placed great emphasis on prayer, teaching that it is the key to maintaining a close and continuous relationship with Allah. The spiritual essence of prayer is the first act that a Muslim is held accountable for on the Day of Judgment. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, famously said, "The first action for which a servant will be questioned on the Day of Judgment will be his prayer. If it is good, then the rest of his actions will be good, and if it is bad, then the rest of his actions will be bad." This statement highlights not only the spiritual importance of prayer, but its role in shaping the moral character of a Muslim. The spiritual aspect of prayer goes beyond the ritualistic actions and the physical motions of bowing, prostrating, and standing. Salat is meant to be a moment of deep personal connection with Allah. It is during these 5 daily prayers that a Muslim is reminded of their purpose in life and the significance of submission to the will of Allah. In prayer, Muslims express gratitude for Allah's blessings, seek His guidance, and ask for forgiveness. It is a way of purifying the heart and soul, and the repeated act of prayer throughout the day helps keep a believer focused on their faith, no matter the circumstances. The 5 daily prayers, a spiritual discipline. The obligation of performing 5 prayers daily, Fajr, Duha, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha, serves to structure a Muslim's day around their faith. These prayers come at specific times, each serving as a reminder to pause from daily life, reflect, and reconnect with Allah. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, emphasized that these prayers are a means of purification, both spiritually and physically. Fajr, dawn prayer. This prayer takes place before sunrise and is a beautiful reminder of the start of a new day. It marks the beginning of a Muslim's day, with a focus on Allah, helping to instill discipline and awareness of the Creator early in the morning. Dhikr, midday prayer. Performed after the sun passes its zenith, this prayer offers a spiritual break during the middle of the day. It encourages a moment of reflection, helping a Muslim maintain focus on their faith and not get lost in worldly concerns. ASR, afternoon prayer. The ASR prayer comes during the late afternoon, just before sunset. It serves as a time for spiritual reflection to help Muslims avoid distractions as the day nears its close, reminding them to maintain their connection with Allah even as the day gets busier. Maghrib, evening prayer. This prayer takes place just after sunset, marking the end of the day. Maghrib allows for a moment of gratitude as Muslims reflect on the day that has passed and seek forgiveness for any shortcomings. Isha, night prayer. The final prayer of the day, performed before going to sleep, is a way to close the day with remembrance of Allah, seeking peace and protection through the night. It is a reminder to end the day on a spiritually grounded note. The communal aspect of prayer. While prayer is an individual act of worship, it also has a powerful communal aspect that brings Muslims together. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, emphasized the importance of performing prayers in congregation, jama'ah, particularly for the 5 daily prayers. He said, "The reward of a prayer performed in congregation is 27 times greater than the reward of a prayer performed individually." The communal prayer, especially the Jumu'ah, Friday prayer, brings Muslims together in unity and solidarity, fostering a sense of brotherhood. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, would lead the Friday prayer with his companions, offering guidance and sermons on matters of faith and morality. The gathering of Muslims, for Jumu'ah is an opportunity to reflect on the week, seek forgiveness, and pray together for the well-being of the community. Prayer as a source of guidance and strength. In times of hardship or uncertainty, the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, would turn to prayer for solace and guidance. Prayer provided him with the strength to endure the many challenges he faced, from persecution in Mecca to the loss of loved ones, to the battles and struggles he endured. The Prophet, PBUH, taught that in times of difficulty, prayer was a way to seek Allah's support, to find inner peace, and to remember the bigger purpose in life. One of the most profound sayings of the Prophet, PBUH, about prayer is, "The most beloved of deeds to Allah are those that are most consistent, even if they are few." This hadith emphasizes the importance of maintaining regularity in prayer, as it is the consistency in worship and remembrance of Allah that truly strengthens the relationship between a believer and their Creator. Conclusion. Prayer as the heart of a Muslim's life. In essence, prayer is the heartbeat of a Muslim's daily life. It provides spiritual nourishment, a sense of purpose, and a constant connection to Allah. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, not only demonstrated the importance of prayer in his life, but also instilled in his followers the profound impact that regular, sincere prayer can have on a person's heart, mind, and soul. It is a reminder that, no matter the trials faced, a believer always has the opportunity to turn to Allah in prayer, seeking peace, guidance, and closeness to their Creator. As the Prophet, PBUH, said, "The coolness of my eyes is in prayer." Prayer was not just a duty to him, but a cherished act that brought him peace and connection to the divine. In the same way, prayer remains a source of comfort and spiritual renewal for Muslims around the world, allowing them to draw closer to Allah and to find balance and harmony in their lives. Charity and social justice were central to the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, and are integral aspects of Islam. From the very beginning of his prophethood, the Prophet, PBUH, emphasized the importance of caring for the less fortunate, protecting the rights of the marginalized, and striving for a just and equitable society. His teachings on charity, sadaqah, and justice were not limited to individual acts of generosity, but were deeply intertwined with the broader societal and ethical framework that Islam seeks to establish. Charity as a pillar of Islam. Charity is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and it plays a fundamental role in a Muslim's duty to society. The act of giving to those in need is not merely a voluntary act of kindness, but a religious obligation that serves to purify a Muslim's wealth, help the less fortunate, and strengthen the community. There are several forms of charity in Islam, ranging from voluntary donations, sadaqah, to obligatory almsgiving, zakat, which is a fixed, percentage of a Muslim's wealth that must be given to those in need. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, emphasized the significance of charity by saying, "The best of people are those who are most beneficial to others." He taught that charity was not just about giving money, but about contributing to the welfare of others in any way possible, through acts of kindness, offering support, and working toward the betterment of society. Charity, in this sense, was seen as a way to express gratitude to Allah for His blessings and to foster a sense of community and solidarity among Muslims. Zakat, the obligation of charity. One of the most important aspects of Islamic charity is zakat, the obligatory almsgiving. Zakat is a form of wealth purification, where a Muslim is required to give 2.5% of their savings and assets annually to those in need. The purpose of zakat is twofold. It purifies a Muslim's wealth and soul, and it ensures that wealth is circulated within society to reduce inequality and poverty. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, made it clear that zakat was not optional, but a binding duty. He said, "The wealth of a believer is not diminished by giving charity." This reflects the profound understanding that giving in charity is a means of spiritual growth, and that Allah compensates those who give selflessly. Zakat is meant to alleviate the burden of poverty, help those who are struggling to meet their basic needs, and create a more equitable and just society. Sadaqah, voluntary charity. While zakat is obligatory, sadaqah refers to voluntary charity, any act of giving that goes beyond the minimum requirement of zakat. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, encouraged Muslims to give sadaqah frequently and in any form they could afford. He said, "Every act of kindness is charity." This broad definition of charity includes not just monetary gifts, but also acts of kindness, such as helping others, providing guidance, or simply smiling at someone. The Prophet, PBUH, taught that even the smallest act of charity is valuable in the eyes of Allah, and it helps foster a culture of mutual care and support. The concept of sadaqah also extends to actions that contribute to the public good. Building schools, providing access to clean water, supporting orphanages, and helping the sick are all considered forms of voluntary charity. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, highlighted that acts of charity are not confined to material wealth, but encompass all efforts that promote the welfare of others. Social justice, Prophet Muhammad's, PBUH, vision of an equitable society. While charity plays a significant role in Islam, Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, also emphasized the importance of social justice as a means to address the root causes of inequality and poverty. His vision of social justice was comprehensive, focusing not only on alleviating the suffering of the poor, but also on creating a just society where the rights of all individuals, regardless of their social status, were protected. One of the core principles of Islamic justice is the idea that all people are equal in the eyes of Allah. The Prophet, PBUH, famously declared in his last sermon, "All mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, and a non-Arab has no superiority over an Arab. A white has no superiority over a black, and a black has no superiority over a white. None have superiority over another, except by piety and good deeds." This principle is a cornerstone of the social justice framework in Islam, emphasizing that no one should be discriminated against based on their race, ethnicity, gender, or social class. The Prophet's emphasis on compassion for the poor and marginalized. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, was deeply compassionate toward the poor, orphans, and other marginalized groups in society. He recognized that poverty was not just an individual hardship, but a societal issue that required collective action. The Prophet, PBUH, not only encouraged charity, but also sought to address the social and economic conditions that led to poverty and inequality. In the hadith, Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, is reported to have said, "The believer's shade on the day of judgment will be his charity." This statement reflects the immense reward of giving in charity, not just in terms of material benefit, but in terms of spiritual reward. The Prophet, PBUH, emphasized that helping the poor and the needy was not just about giving money, but about ensuring that society took collective responsibility for the well-being of all its members. The lasting legacy of charity and social justice in Islam. The teachings of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, on charity and social justice continue to have a profound impact on Islamic societies today. The principles of caring for the less fortunate, ensuring the fair distribution of wealth, and promoting justice remain central to Islamic values. The emphasis on charity, both obligatory and voluntary, has led to the establishment of numerous humanitarian organizations and efforts to alleviate poverty across the Muslim world. The Prophet's PBUH call for social justice serves as a timeless reminder that Islam is not just a religion of individual piety, but one that calls for collective responsibility and action to create a fair and just society. The principles of charity, justice, and compassion remain deeply embedded in Islamic practice, shaping the way Muslims interact with each other and with the wider world. The heart and its purification. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, frequently emphasized the importance of the heart in the spiritual journey. He taught that the heart is the seat of a person's faith, intentions, and actions, and it must be kept clean from impurities such as arrogance, envy, and hatred. In a famous hadith, he said, "Verily, in the body there is a piece of flesh that, if it becomes good, reformed, the whole body becomes good. But if it becomes corrupt, the whole body becomes corrupt." That piece of flesh is the heart, Sahih Bukhari. This teaching highlights that the state of the heart is directly related to a Muslim's relationship with Allah and their conduct in the world. The Prophet, PBUH, encouraged his followers to engage in regular acts of spiritual purification, including prayer, remembrance of Allah, dhikr, fasting, and charity, all of which contribute to the purification of the heart. By purging negative traits and cultivating virtuous qualities, a Muslim draws closer to Allah and enhances their inner peace. Tawbah, the journey of repentance. An essential aspect of the spiritual journey in Islam is the act of tawbah, repentance. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, taught that all human beings are prone to mistakes and sins, but the key to spiritual progress lies in sincere repentance and returning to Allah. The Prophet, PBUH, reassured his followers that Allah is always ready to forgive, saying, "O son of Adam, so long as you pray to me and hope in me, I will forgive you for what you have done, and I will not mind." Sahih Muslim. Repentance is not merely an outward act of seeking forgiveness, but a deeply personal and transformative process. It involves acknowledging one's mistakes, feeling remorse, and making a sincere commitment to improve and seek Allah's guidance. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, emphasized that repentance purifies the soul, restoring a Muslim's connection to Allah and reinforcing the internal resolve to follow the righteous path. In this way, Tawbah becomes a constant cycle in the life of a believer. The journey of spiritual growth requires frequent self-reflection and returning to Allah in repentance, which ultimately strengthens one's faith and brings them closer to divine mercy. Dhikr, remembering Allah. One of the most powerful tools for the spiritual journey is dhikr, the remembrance of Allah. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, taught his followers to frequently engage in the remembrance of Allah through specific phrases and prayers, particularly after daily prayers or during times of difficulty. Dhikr serves as a spiritual practice that connects the heart to Allah, drawing a Muslim's focus away from worldly distractions and toward divine presence. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, said, "Whoever says, Subhanallah wa bihamdi, glory is to Allah and praise is due to Him, 100 times a day, will have his sins forgiven, even if they are like the foam of the sea." Sahih Bukhari. The practice of dhikr is simple yet profound, and it helps to purify the heart by keeping it constantly engaged with the remembrance of the Creator. Fasting, a means of self-discipline. Another crucial element of the spiritual journey is sawm, fasting, particularly during the month of Ramadan. Fasting is not just an act of abstaining from food and drink, but an exercise in self-discipline, patience, and closeness to Allah. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, taught that fasting purifies the soul by teaching self-restraint and helping a person become more mindful of their dependence on Allah. Through fasting, Muslims are reminded of the needs of the less fortunate and are encouraged to cultivate empathy, generosity, and gratitude. The Prophet, PBUH, said, "Whoever fasts during the month of Ramadan, with faith and hoping for Allah's reward, will have their past sins forgiven." Sahih Bukhari. Fasting serves as a purification of both the body and the soul. By temporarily removing the comforts of the world, fasting allows a Muslim to focus more intently on their spiritual needs, leading to greater self-awareness and humility. Salah, the connection to Allah, prayer, salah, is the most direct and essential act of worship in Islam. It is through salah that a Muslim establishes a direct line of communication with Allah, offering praise, seeking guidance, and expressing gratitude. The 5 daily prayers not only serve as a way to maintain spiritual discipline, but they also function as moments of spiritual elevation, helping Muslims center their hearts and minds in the worship of Allah. The role of patience and gratitude. The journey towards Allah is one of endurance, requiring patience, sabr, and gratitude, shukr. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, taught that true spiritual progress comes not only in moments of ease, but also in times of hardship. Patience in adversity and gratitude in times of ease are both essential qualities of a believer's spiritual growth. In times of trial, the Prophet, PBUH, taught that Muslims should remain patient and trust in Allah's plan, for every hardship is an opportunity for spiritual purification. Likewise, during moments of blessing, Muslims are encouraged to express gratitude to Allah for His mercy and bounty. The balance of patience and gratitude is key to maintaining a sincere relationship with Allah. The ultimate goal, closeness to Allah. Ultimately, the spiritual journey of a Muslim is a lifelong process of seeking closeness to Allah. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, set the standard for this journey through his exemplary conduct, unwavering devotion, and constant effort to purify his heart and soul. His life was a continuous reflection of the divine guidance he received, and his spiritual journey serves as a model for all Muslims to follow. The Prophet's PBUH life teaches that the spiritual journey is not about perfection, but about striving to improve oneself, purifying the heart, and submitting to Allah with sincerity. Every act of worship, every act of kindness, and every effort to purify the soul is part of this journey toward Allah. By following the teachings and example of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, Muslims are empowered to take this journey with confidence, knowing that Allah is always near, ready to accept their repentance, guide their hearts, and reward their efforts. The relationship between Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, and his companions is one of the most profound and inspiring aspects of his life. These relationships were not just based on loyalty and affection, but were deeply rooted in faith, mutual respect, and shared commitment to the mission of Islam. The companions, or Sahaba, were the closest individuals to the Prophet, PBUH, and their bond with him shaped the early Muslim community and provided a model for future generations. The Prophet's compassionate leadership. Prophet Muhammad's, PBUH, relationship with his companions was characterized by empathy, understanding, and leadership by example. He did not simply issue commands from a position of authority. He was a servant leader who lived alongside his companions, shared their struggles, and participated in their daily lives. His humility and accessibility made him approachable, and his companions saw him as a source of wisdom, comfort, and guidance. The Prophet, PBUH, treated his companions with great respect, listening to their concerns, offering counsel, and encouraging them to express their opinions. He was known to consult his companions regularly in matters of governance, war, and social issues, fostering a sense of shared responsibility and collaboration within the Muslim community. One of the most notable examples of this was the Sakifah, the gathering after the Prophet's death. where his companions came together to decide on the leadership of the Muslim Ummah. This consultation reflects the Prophet's PBUH approach to leadership, valuing the input of his companions while maintaining a unified direction for the community. Lessons of loyalty and sacrifice. The loyalty of the Prophet's PBUH companions is one of the defining features of their relationship. The companions were unwavering in their support for the Prophet PBUH, even when it meant sacrificing their wealth, their status, and in some cases, their lives. They demonstrated an unshakable commitment to the Prophet's mission, which was evident in their actions during key moments of Islamic history. The hijrah, migration from Mecca to Medina, is one of the most poignant examples of the loyalty and sacrifice of the companions. When the Prophet PBUH faced growing opposition in Mecca, he and his companions made the difficult decision to leave their homes and migrate to Medina. This journey was fraught with danger, yet the companions followed the Prophet PBUH without hesitation, driven by their deep faith in his message. Among the companions, Abu Bakr and Ali, along with the other early emigrants, Muhajirun, showed immense loyalty and sacrifice during the hijrah, leaving behind everything they knew in pursuit of a higher purpose. Similarly, during the Battle of Uhud, when the Muslims faced tremendous hardship and many were injured or killed, the companions remained steadfast in their commitment to the Prophet PBUH. The battle itself is remembered as a test of loyalty and faith, where many companions risked their lives to protect the Prophet PBUH. Despite the challenges, they never wavered in their support of him. The Prophet's guidance and mentorship. Prophet Muhammad PBUH played the role of a mentor and teacher to his companions, guiding them not just in religious matters but also in personal growth and moral development. He taught them the value of patience, humility, generosity, and sincerity, and he instilled in them a strong sense of social justice and responsibility. His guidance was not limited to religious rituals, but extended to everyday actions, shaping the ethical foundation of the companions' lives. The Prophet's mentorship was evident in the way he helped his companions overcome their weaknesses. For example, Abu Hurairah, one of the most famous narrators of hadith, was initially a poor man with limited resources. Under the Prophet's PBUH guidance, Abu Hurairah became one of the most knowledgeable companions, dedicating his life to preserving and spreading the teachings of the Prophet PBUH. The Prophet PBUH helped his companions understand the deeper meanings of faith and how to apply those meanings in their lives. The Prophet's compassion for his companions. The Prophet Muhammad PBUH was not only a leader but also a compassionate friend. His love and care for his companions were reflected in his actions and his words. He would often express affection for his companions, comforting them during times of sorrow and celebrating their achievements. The Prophet's PBUH bond with his companions was one of deep affection, and he would often call them my brothers and speak highly of their virtues. The relationship between the Prophet PBUH and his companions was also marked by mutual respect. The Prophet PBUH treated his companions as equal partners in the mission of Islam, regardless of their social status, age, or background. He showed kindness and respect to everyone, from the young companion Anas ibn Malik to the elderly companion Abu Dar al-Ghifari. This inclusive attitude helped foster a strong sense of unity and brotherhood among the companions. Legacy of the Prophet's companions. The companions of Prophet Muhammad PBUH left behind a lasting legacy that continues to inspire Muslims around the world. Their loyalty, dedication, and sacrifices were crucial in the establishment and spread of Islam, and their example serves as a model for Muslims today. The companions' love for the Prophet PBUH and their commitment to his message transformed the Arabian Peninsula and laid the foundation for the global Islamic community. The lessons of loyalty, sacrifice, and devotion demonstrated by the companions continue to resonate in modern times. Their willingness to follow the Prophet PBUH through thick and thin, their resilience in the face of adversity, and their unwavering faith in Allah's plan remain a source of inspiration for all Muslims striving to live righteous and faithful lives. The teachings of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, are the foundation of Islam, providing a comprehensive guide for spiritual, social, ethical, and political life. His messages, delivered over 1,000 years ago, continue to resonate deeply in the hearts and minds of Muslims around the world. From individual practices to the governance of entire societies, the core principles that Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, taught have shaped Islamic societies and continue to influence modern Islamic thought, behavior, and leadership. Spiritual and moral guidance. At the heart of the Prophet's teachings is the call for personal transformation through faith, devotion, and self-purification. His guidance on the purification of the heart, tazkiyah, the importance of sincerity in worship, and the cultivation of positive moral traits remains central to the practice of Islam today. The 5 daily prayers, salah, that the Prophet, PBUH, established as a regular part of a Muslim's life continue to serve as the most direct means of maintaining a relationship with Allah, strengthening spiritual devotion, and seeking guidance. The Prophet, PBUH, placed great emphasis on character and ethics. His sayings such as, "The best of you are those who have the best manners and character," inspire Muslims to prioritize qualities like honesty, humility, generosity, and patience in their daily interactions. These moral teachings influence not only individual behavior, but also the societal norms that guide relationships, social justice, and community building within Islamic societies. The role of justice and equality in Islam. One of the most revolutionary aspects of Prophet Muhammad's PBUH teachings was his advocacy for justice and equality, which laid the groundwork for the social and political principles that shape Islamic societies today. The Prophet, PBUH, abolished practices such as the pre-Islamic oppression of women, infanticide, and class-based discrimination. He emphasized that all people are equal in the eyes of Allah, with the only distinction being their piety and good deeds. This call for equality and justice remains a cornerstone of Islamic governance and social life. The Prophet, PBUH, famously stated in his last sermon, "All mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, and a non-Arab has no superiority over an Arab. A white has no superiority over a black, and a black has no superiority over a white. None have superiority over another except by piety and good deeds." This emphasis on equality is reflected in modern Islamic societies that continue to challenge racial, ethnic, and social inequalities, advocating for the fair treatment of all individuals, regardless of their background. The Prophet's teachings on charity and social welfare. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, was a champion of charity and social welfare, and this remains an essential component of modern Islamic practice. His teachings on the importance of caring for the less fortunate, promoting social justice, and eradicating poverty have inspired countless charitable organizations and social justice movements throughout the Muslim world. The obligation of zakat, almsgiving, continues to be one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and it is a practice that shapes the social fabric of Muslim communities globally. Zakat not only serves as a means to help the needy, but also as a way to purify one's wealth, reinforcing the idea that all possessions ultimately belong to Allah. In modern times, zakat funds are used to support a wide range of social causes, from helping the poor and the orphaned to providing educational and healthcare services in impoverished regions. Voluntary charity, sadaqah, has also become a major avenue for addressing issues of social justice and poverty. The Prophet Muhammad's PBUH teachings continue to motivate Muslims to contribute to the welfare of their communities, whether through direct financial support, volunteer work, or other acts of kindness. Education and intellectual pursuit. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, placed great importance on the pursuit of knowledge, both religious and worldly. He is quoted as saying, "Seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim." This emphasis on education has had a profound impact on the development of Islamic societies, particularly during the Islamic Golden Age, when Muslim scholars made groundbreaking contributions to fields such as mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Today, the Prophet's PBUH teachings continue to inspire Muslims to seek knowledge, both religious and secular. Islamic universities and institutions of higher learning remain integral to the Muslim world, where the pursuit of knowledge is regarded not only as a personal responsibility, but as an essential component of contributing to the greater good of society. His emphasis on knowledge as a means of both personal development and societal benefit continues to influence educational reforms and initiatives in many Muslim majority countries. The global impact of the Prophet's teachings. The impact of Prophet Muhammad's PBUH teachings extends far beyond the Muslim world, influencing global movements for social justice, equality, and human rights. His emphasis on compassion, mercy, and justice has resonated with people of all faiths and backgrounds, contributing to the global discourse on the rights of the poor, the oppressed, and the marginalized. Islamic principles of social justice and equality have inspired international movements for civil rights, gender equality, and the protection of human dignity. The universal message of the Prophet PBUH continues to be a source of strength and hope for Muslims and non-Muslims alike, calling for a world built on fairness, respect, and mutual understanding. Conclusion: the everlasting influence of Prophet Muhammad's teachings. The teachings of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, continue to shape the Muslim world today, providing a framework for spiritual growth, social justice, and ethical conduct. His example as a leader, teacher, and servant of Allah is timeless, and his influence can be seen in the way Muslims strive to live their lives in accordance with the principles of faith, morality, and justice. The Prophet's PBUH teachings have not only impacted Islamic societies, but have left a lasting imprint on the broader world, shaping ideas of equality, charity, governance, and education. As Muslims continue to navigate the complexities of modern life, the timeless wisdom of Prophet Muhammad's PBUH message serves as a guiding light, offering hope, direction, and purpose to all who seek to live in accordance with Allah's will, a legacy of compassion and justice. One of the most striking aspects of Prophet Muhammad's PBUH legacy is his unwavering commitment to justice and compassion. Throughout his life, he stood up for the oppressed, advocated for equality, and worked tirelessly to establish a just society based on the principles of fairness and respect for all individuals. His message broke down the social hierarchies that had existed for centuries, emphasizing that all people are equal in the eyes of Allah, with their worth determined not by their wealth, race, or social status, but by their piety and good deeds. The Prophet's PBUH teachings on justice, especially his commitment to protecting the rights of women, the poor, orphans, and marginalized groups, continue to inspire modern movements for equality and human rights. The call for social justice and the emphasis on compassion remain at the core of Islamic values, driving efforts to create a more just and equitable world. His teachings remind us that true faith is demonstrated not only in rituals and prayers, but also in how we treat others and work toward the betterment of society. The timeless relevance of his teachings. In the face of contemporary challenges, be it political turmoil, social inequality, or environmental degradation, the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, offer timeless guidance. His emphasis on personal accountability, community solidarity, and responsibility to others remains as relevant today as it was during his lifetime. The idea that every Muslim is a part of a larger global ummah community is a powerful reminder of the interconnectedness of humanity and the shared responsibility to care for one another. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, as the perfect model. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, remains the ultimate role model for Muslims, and his life continues to serve as a guide for personal development, leadership, and community building. His humility, kindness, patience, and resilience in the face of adversity offer practical examples for Muslims to emulate in their own lives. Whether dealing with personal hardships, engaging in social or political struggles, or interacting with others, the Prophet's PBUH example provides a framework for ethical conduct, The role of the Prophet's teachings in shaping modern Islam. The core teachings of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, continue to shape Islamic societies around the world today. From the core practices of worship, such as prayer, fasting, and charity, to the broader principles of justice, equality, and community, his teachings continue to guide Muslims in all aspects of life. Islamic law, or Sharia, which is derived from the Quran, and the hadith, the sayings and actions of the Prophet, provides a comprehensive framework for social, economic, and political life. As the Muslim world faces new challenges, from globalization and technological advances to issues of political instability and environmental concerns, the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, offer timeless wisdom for addressing these issues. His focus on the importance of education, the value of knowledge, and the need for